In the wind-swept outpost of Dry Creek, the sun rose over the hills like a rusted coin, pale and merciless. For most, it was just another scorched day, but for Sella Hawk, the road's quiet hush was the only thing she trusted. She was the driver of the overland stage, the line that connected forgotten settlements to the rest of the world. And in a place where your word was only as good as your gun, most folks mistook her silence for weakness. She liked it that way. Sella wasn't tall, nor did she look especially fearsome. Her hat sat low over eyes the color of storm clouds, and she had the lean build of someone who'd spent more nights under the stars than under a roof. She'd been driving this route for 7 years, long enough to know where the road turned. Mean and when trouble might ride the wind. Long enough to learn that men who carried pistols on their hips liked to believe they were wolves, and that they'd sooner test a lone woman with reins in her hands than a sheriff in his office. That morning, she watched the town wake as she loaded crates and mailbags into the coach. Dry Creek wasn't much. 2 saloons, a general store, a few tents out on the edge where the desperate scraped by. She saw the usual figures: Silas Boone, the wiry telegraph operator, who gave her a respectful nod; Miss Tilly from the boarding house, passing her a tin cup of coffee as she worked. She saw them all but spoke to none. Conversation only led to memories, and Sella Hawk didn't have time for ghosts. She did, however, have time for the dust. The first sign was the silence. The second was the crows lifting from the roofs, black wings a restless omen. She felt it. Before she saw them, 5 riders drifting in from the north, moving slow and easy, like they owned the road and everything on it. Sella didn't stop loading the coach, but her eyes narrowed beneath the brim of her hat. They wore the dust like armor, long coats, boots scuffed raw, guns that rode low on their thighs, men who wanted to be seen and feared. The one in front, broad-shouldered, with a sunburned grin that didn't reach his eyes, tipped his hat to her as they rode up. "Mornin', little dove," he drawled. His voice was thick as snake oil. "Ain't you a pretty sight on a dull day?" Sella didn't answer. She cinched down the last strap on the cargo door, feeling the leather bite into her palm. Another rider snorted. He looked young, his mustache trying too hard to make him seem older. "I asked around," he said to his leader. "They say she don't talk much. Folks call her Hawk's Shadow, on account she's always watchin'." The leader swung down from his horse, boots thumping on the dry earth. He walked close enough that she smelled the stale whiskey on his breath. "That so? Well, Shadow, maybe today you can talk to us. See, we're in need of a ride. US and hour. Goods." He flicked his hand and one of the gang dropped the burlap sack onto the dirt. It hit with a dull thud. Coins clinked inside, blood money if she'd ever heard it. "I run a mail coach," she said, her voice flat, the first words she'd spoken all morning. "Not a bandit cab." Silence swallowed the street. The other townsfolk scattered behind. Shutters and saloon doors, the street empty but for the 5 of them and the distant rattle of the wind. "You hear that?" the leader asked, turning to his men with a grin. "She thinks she's got a choice." One of them stepped forward, a big man, his beard scraggly and his knuckles scarred from too many fights. He grabbed the edge of the coach, testing its weight. "How much gold you figure she hauls on these runs?" Sella didn't move. Her hands rested by her sides, calm as dusk. "Enough to bury you all," the leader laughed. "Oh, I like you, little dove, I do. But we can't have you running off to the next town, flapping your wings. Can we, boys?" The youngest one stepped forward, eager, hand twitching near his pistol. "Should we teach her a lesson?" The leader studied her, really looked this time. He saw what others missed, the coiled patience, the glint in her eyes like the far edge of a storm. But he mistook it for fear. "Nah," he said finally, voice soft as silk. "No need to scar that pretty face. Just tie her up, load the coach. We ride out by noon." He turned his back on her, his last mistake. Sella's left hand moved like the flicker of a snake's tongue. Steel caught the light, a blade no longer than a man's hand, but sharp enough to shave the world clean. She buried it in the big man's thigh before he knew she'd moved. He screamed, crumpling to the dirt as blood soaked his pants. The youngest one got his gun halfway out of its holster. Sella drew hers smoother than a whisper. One shot clean, through the wrist. The revolver hit the ground before he did. The leader spun, fury burning away his grin. "You bitch!" He lunged, but Sella stepped sideways, hooking his coat with the curve of her knife. He stumbled past her, off balance, and she let him crash into the coach's wheel. Dust billowed. His hat tumbled off, the last of his swagger. With it, she stood above him, gun steady, eyes unreadable. The wind sighed through the empty street. "Get up," she said. He did, face flushed with hate and humiliation. He glanced at his men, one howling in the dirt, one cradling his ruined wrist, the others wide-eyed and frozen. She didn't miss the tremble in his fingers when he tried to brush dust off his coat. "You think you're safe?" he hissed. "You think you'll ride out of here, just you and your pretty little stagecoach? You made a mistake, lady. You made the worst mistake." Sella cocked the hammer back, the sound crisp as dry bones. "No," she said, voice low enough to scrape the marrow from a man's courage. "You did." She jerked her chin toward the horses. "Go, you come back, you best bring more than 5. Bring the whole damn territory. And bring a coffin for yourself while you're at it." The leader hesitated, just for a heartbeat. Then he spat in the dust and nodded to the others. They stumbled to their mounts, dragging their wounded behind. No one dared meet her eyes. When they were gone, Dry Creek exhaled. Doors creaked open, heads peeked out, but no one spoke. Sella climbed into the driver's seat of her stagecoach, the leather reins rough in her calloused hands. She looked at the empty street, the bloodstains already drying to rust. Trouble would ride with the wind now. She'd drawn her line, and they'd cross it soon enough. But Sella Hawk was ready. Her mother once told her that the strongest roots are buried deepest, and Sella's roots were sunk in blood and iron and miles of lonely road. She flicked the reins, and the stagecoach rolled out of Dry Creek, rattling toward a horizon that promised bullets, ghosts, and legend. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Sella Hawk rode the overland stage into the teeth of the afternoon sun, the dust cloud behind her coach drifting like a ragged flag of warning. She felt every bump of the wheels through the reins in her hands, the way the horses' muscles bunched and stretched as they pulled her through land that never gave up its secrets easily. Dry Creek shrank behind her, a speck on the horizon, but the echo of those bandits' threats clung to the back of her neck like the sweat under her collar. The road out here was a living thing. It cracked and split beneath the weight of wagons and the hooves of riders who thought they owned the dirt beneath their boots. Sella had learned a long time ago that the road only let you pass if you respected it, and if you kept your eyes wide open for the trouble that lurked in its bends and gullies. The sun dipped low as the trail began to climb. The old Ponderosa. Pines rose like sentinels on either side, shadows stretching long across the narrow pass ahead. Sella slowed the team to a walk, her eyes scanning the tree line, her ears tuned to every rustle and snap of a twig. She didn't need to see a gun barrel to know someone was there. She could feel it in her bones, the same way she could sense when a storm was about to break. A crow croaked overhead. Sella's eyes cut toward it, but she kept the coach moving. She knew if they were going to come, it would be here. Narrow ground. Easy to block. No easy place to run. She wasn't surprised when the shadows moved. 6 riders this time. Not the same as the 5 from Dry Creek. She recognized one of them, the young fool whose wrist she'd shot through. His arm was bound tight to his chest now, his face pale beneath the rim of his hat. But the man at the front was new, a heavy-set figure, his coat riding open to show the brass star pinned to his vest, a badge. But no lawman carried himself like this one did, half slouched in the saddle, his boots caked with mud, and worse, they blocked the pass without a word. Sella pulled the coach to a halt, letting the dust settle. Her fingers flexed around the reins. Once before she looped them over the brake handle and stepped down, her boots crunched on gravel. She left her rifle inside. No sense in pretending. The big man with the badge looked her over with a grin that showed too many yellow teeth. "Miss Hawk, is it? Heard you were a mite troublesome back in Dry Creek. Word rides faster than any coach." Sella didn't bother answering. She stepped around to the side of the coach, unlatched a cargo door, and pulled free a small satchel of mail. She could feel their eyes track her every move. "Now see," the big man said, swinging off his horse with the grace of a bear falling out of a tree. "Here's your problem, Miss Hawk. You ain't learned your place yet. You got lucky in town. But out here," he spread his arms wide, showing off the empty road and the thick trees crowding close. "Out here, luck don't mean a damn thing." The boy she'd shot swallowed hard, shifting in his saddle. The others fanned out, cutting off any notion of turning the coach around. "You aiming to rob the mail?" Sella asked, voice level as river stone. The man laughed. "No, ma'am, we're just tacking our due. This patch of road, it's ours. Been ours for years, long before the overland started running coaches through it." She dropped the satchel back inside the coach, dusted her hands. Then, "You ought to know this coach carries more than money. It carries word. Word gets out that you robbed it, there'll be rangers. Rangers bring more guns." He stepped closer, so close she could smell the rot between his teeth. "You think we fear rangers? Word's already out on you, Shadow. They say you've been hiding behind that quiet tongue of yours. But today, you're gonna lose that name. We're gonna carve it right out of you." His hand darted forward, too fast for a man that big. But Sella was faster. She stepped back just enough that his fingers closed on air. Her eyes never left his face. "You want the gold?" she asked. "Take it. Leave the mail. Leave the passengers." He blinked. "Passengers?" She jerked her chin at the coach. "Old widow back there. Couple of farmhands. They got nothing you want." He grinned. "Darlin', what I want ain't in that coach." Behind him, the riders shifted again. Sella's breath clouded. In the growing chill, the sun had nearly slipped behind the ridgeline, shadows swallowing the pass whole. She could almost hear her mother's voice, then sharp as the bite of winter wind. "When they come for you, don't you stand small. Make your shadow larger then." Their fear, the big man reached for her again. This time she didn't step back. She turned with his grab, caught his wrist in both hands, and drove her knee into his gut. The sound that came out of him was more pig than man. 1. Heartbeat. 2. She ripped his revolver from his holster as he doubled over. The riders froze, caught off guard by the sudden crack in his swagger. Sella stepped back, the heavy iron in her hand steady as her heartbeat. "Back away," she said, voice low, "all of you." The boy she'd shot last time stared at her like he'd seen a ghost. "Boss." The big man coughed, spitting into the dirt. "She ain't got the guts." She fired. The bullet struck an inch from his boot, sending a spray of dirt into the air. He flinched hard, and one of the horses shied sideways, nearly unseating its rider. "Try me again," Sella said. Slowly they began to back their horses away. The boy was the last, his eyes wide and hollow. Sella kept her gun trained on them until they melted into the pines, hoofbeats muffled by the thick blanket of needles. She didn't holster the revolver. She tossed it into the coach, then climbed back into her seat, boots creaking on the worn step. She let out a slow breath, one hand pressed to her ribs. She could feel it now, the edge of exhaustion, the coil of fear that would come later, when the road was quiet again. But for now, the wind was her only companion. She flicked the reins, coaxing the horses into a trot. The coach rattled forward through the darkening pass, the road unfurling before her like the spine of some great beast. Behind her, the pines whispered secrets to the dusk. Sella Hawk didn't look back. She never did. The next morning rose cold and gray, a fine mist drifting off the riverbank as Sella Hawk guided her stagecoach along a stretch of road few bothered to claim. The horse's breath steamed in the dawn, plumes that vanished as fast as trussed out. Here, the iron of her revolver rested heavy on her thigh, the weight of what she'd done heavier still. She could feel it in her shoulders, in the dull throb of her bruises, but none of it touched her eyes. Those stayed sharp as a hawk's, fixed on the road ahead. Word had flown ahead of her. It always did. She'd left 2 bands of men humiliated, bruised and hungry for vengeance, and in the West, wounded pride was more dangerous than any pistol. She could feel it coming for her like thunder rolling over the prairie by noon. The mist had lifted, but Sella's unease hadn't. She reined in at a creek crossing, water gurgling over rocks, the wheels sinking, just enough to make the coach groan. She checked the horses, brushed the sweat from their necks, and ran her palm along the canvas roof where the mail sat bundled. The wind brought no voices, no hoofbeats, just the hush that made the skin crawl when you knew you weren't alone. She unbuckled her canteen and knelt by the stream. The cold bit her fingers, woke up the ache in her bones. The road would get meaner from here, narrow gullies, switchbacks carved into red rock. No room to turn a coach, no room to run. A perfect place for an ambush. She filled the canteen, stood. And that's when she heard it, the distant crack of a branch, the low snort of a horse trying to keep still. She didn't turn. Instead, she finished securing her water and leaned against the coach as if she hadn't heard a thing. "You boys keep sending the same amateurs," she said to the trees, "and you're gonna run out of fingers before you. Run out of threats." A shape stepped out of the shadows older than the others, hair gone mostly gray, the lines in his face carved deep as the canyons around them. He wore a battered duster and a revolver that looked older than her stagecoach. His boots crunched in the pebbles by the creek. "You must be Sella Hawk," he said, voice mild, eyes not. "I've been riding these roads 20 years, and I never heard of a driver who pulled steel on a man first. That so?" She didn't shift her weight, didn't look away. "Then maybe you're not riding the right roads." He hooked his thumbs in his belt, studying her the way a butcher sizes up a hog. "They're saying you think you're untouchable. That you think you got some kind of mark on you keeps bullets from finding your back." Sella smiled without showing teeth. "Bullets don't worry me. Men who shoot them do." He chuckled, dry as riverbed dust. "I like you. Shame I got to bring you in. Who says you're taking me anywhere?" He whistled. More shadows peeled away from the underbrush, 4, 5, 6 men on foot and horseback. They fanned out slow, deliberate, boots scraping the dirt. Their pistols hung loose at their hips, like they thought the weight made them kings. "You ever ask yourself," Sella said, voice calm, "why no one's killed me yet?" The older man raised a brow. "Enlighten me." She took a step back. "Hands open, because you all think I'm alone," he snorted. "Ain't you? Am I?" The creek's gurgle swallowed the silence for a heartbeat, then a rifle cracked, sharp as lightning splitting a pine. One of the riders jerked sideways, hat spinning off into the water. Before the rest could curse, another shot rang out, then another and another. 3 of the men scattered, diving for the tree line. The old man didn't move. He just looked at Sella, squinting against the sun now breaking through the clouds. "You got yourself a guardian angel, huh?" He drawled, "Something like that." She said, stepping closer, "Tell your boys to drop their irons." He tipped his head, almost respectful, and called out, "Drop 'em." A few pistols thudded to the dirt. One man swore under his breath, but didn't resist. The air felt thicker than the creek's mist had ever been. Footsteps crunched behind her. Sella didn't turn. A figure emerged from the brush on the far bank, a woman. lean and long-legged, hair tied back, a battered Sharps rifle balanced casual across her shoulder. Her eyes were as hard as granite, but the smile she gave Sella was warmer than any sun. "Hello, Sella," the woman said. "Darla," Sella murmured. "Didn't figure you'd come. Didn't figure I'd let some half-wit bushwhackers have you all to themselves." The old man stared at Darla, sizing her up. "You ridge country folk think you run these trails. You don't. This road's ours." Darla's eyes glittered. "Then maybe it's time you learn to share." A tension snapped in the man's jaw. He spat into the creek, turned back to Sella. "You ain't done, girl. These men? They ain't. The only ones who want your head. You're stirring up a hornet's nest." Sella's voice stayed steady. "Let 'em swarm. But they better be ready to get stung." He barked a laugh, but it was hollow. Then he motioned to his remaining boys. "Go on, saddle up, we're done here." The figures melted back into the trees. The old man lingered, gave Sella a long look that was equal parts respect and promise. Then he turned his back and rode into the pines. The creek went quiet again, save for Darla wading across, water swirling around her boots. She stopped in front of Sella, lifted a brow. "Stage running late?" Sella smirked. "Always is." They climbed up onto the driver's bench, Darla's rifle resting across her knees. Sella flicked the reins, and the coach lurched forward. The road wound on, as rough and uncertain as ever. "Been a long time," Darla said after a mile of silence. "Wasn't long enough," Sella shot back. But there was no venom in it. Darla leaned back, boots propped against the footrail. "Still driving the loneliest road in the territory. Still thinking you can outrun the past." Sella didn't answer. The wind answered for her, rustling the pines, carrying word that the hawk's shadow had allies in places no one thought to look, and somewhere behind them. The men they'd sent packing would talk about the soft-spoken stage driver who was more than she seemed about the woman beside her, who shot like thunder from a clear sky. The sun cut through the clouds then, painting the road ahead in gold and dust. Sella Hawk didn't smile, but the lines at the corners of her eyes softened just enough to hint that she still could. They had miles to ride, enemies to meet, and legends to build, and Sella was far from done. The dusk found Sella Hawk and Darla riding side by side atop the battered overland coach, the long shadows from the pines swallowing the ruts behind them. The air smelled of cold earth and pine pitch, but underneath it drifted the stale tang of blood and old gunpowder. The wind pressed whispers into Sella's ear. "This road isn't yours alone anymore." And she listened like she always did. Darla watched her from beneath the brim of her hat, one boot hooked on the rail, her rifle across her lap. "You keep looking over your shoulder," she said. "Ain't no one following us yet." Sella flicked the reins, eyes on the narrow ribbon of dirt ahead. "Yet is the word worth remembering. Trouble doesn't have a bedtime." They rode on until the pines gave way to bare hills, the last red light catching on dry grass like dying coals. Ahead, a lone shack perched on a rise, its roof sagging and walls patched with scrap tin. Smoke drifted from a crooked chimney, too thin to be inviting, too thin to hide much warmth. Darla tilted her hat back, studying the place. "This that station you said you'd stop at?" Sella nodded. "Mason's Rest. Used to be a stage stop before the line moved west. Haven't seen a real agent here in 3 years. But there's a well and a place to put our backs to the wall. You trust it?" "No," Sella said, "but I trust the road less." They pulled the coach up alongside a corral that hadn't seen fresh horses in a year or more. Sella stepped down, boots sinking into dust. She could feel Darla's eyes on her back as she knocked on the cabin door. Nothing. She knocked again, harder. When the latch scraped, Sella's hand drifted to the revolver at her hip. The door swung inward, and a figure peered out, short, wiry, with hair like mouse fur and a nose that had been broken too many times. His eyes darted past Sella to the coach, to Darla's rifle glinting in the dusk. "Ain't got room for strays," he rasped. Sella showed him the mailbag. "Got company paper, same as always. We pay for oats, water, a fire." He looked past her again, squinting at Darla. "She part of the company?" Darla just grinned, cold and slow. "I'm the insurance." He seemed to think that over, then stepped back, letting them inside. The room smelled of stale pipe smoke and grease. A single lantern flickered near the hearth, casting jittery shadows on the walls. A kettle hissed on a rusty iron stove. "You been here alone?" Sella asked, eyes sweeping the corners. The old agent shrugged. "Mostly. Get a few riders sometimes. Couriers who can't make it through by night. Ain't none stayed long." Darla crossed to the window, peering into the darkness outside. "What's it like out this stretch lately?" He shrugged again, this time slower. "Worse. Bandits keep finding new spots to set up. Saw a crew come through last week. Didn't talk much. Didn't look right." Sella unbuckled her gun belt, but didn't let it out of reach. She settled near the hearth, stretching her legs out. The warmth felt thin, as if the fire was as wary as the rest of them. Darla stayed near the window. "Tell me about these men." The old agent scratched his whiskered chin. "Didn't give names. But they asked about the overland. Asked when the next driver would come through. One of them, big scar across his cheek, kept muttering about a hawk. Figured they meant you." Sella's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed level. "They say where they'd be waiting." "Nope. Just said they'd wait till the shadows were longest. Didn't matter where." He looked at her, eyes wide and wet. "You staring up devils, girl?" Sella didn't answer. She just leaned her head back against the cracked plaster wall and closed her eyes. She could feel Darla's stare on her, the question that hadn't been spoken yet. The hush stretched long. Outside, the night settled in like a blanket full of knives. When the agent had turned in, Darla finally spoke. "How many, you reckon?" "More than 5. Less than an army," Sella said. "They keep testing. They want me scared enough to quit," Darla snorted. "They're idiots then." Sella's lips twitched. "Or they know something we don't." The fire popped, sending sparks skittering up the chimney. Sella thought of Dry Creek, of the boy clutching his ruined wrist. She thought of the old man at the creek and his promise that worse was coming. She felt it like a splinter under the skin. Darla lowered herself to the floor beside her, back against the same wall. "If you were smart," Darla murmured, "you'd ride south tonight. Disappear." "I did that once," Sella said softly. "Didn't stick. Maybe it will this time." Sella opened her eyes, meeting Darla's steady gaze. "When they come for me, they'll come for anyone near me too. Townsfolk, station keepers, riders, doesn't matter who. I drive this line because someone has to stand up for the ones who can't." Darla's grin faded. "Always were a stubborn fool." Sella leaned her head back, again closing her eyes. "You got better plans, I'm listening." Darla didn't answer. She reached out, plucked Sella's hat from her head, and dropped it on her own knee. In the weak firelight, they looked like two shadows stitched together by the same ragged thread. "Didn't sleep much. They never did. The road didn't allow it. But in the thin hours before dawn, the storm they both felt in their bones finally spoke. It came with the sound of hooves, dozens of them, and voices, low and hungry, and the hush of a rifle bolt sliding home. Sella rose first, smooth and silent, gun already in hand. Darla tossed her hat back, snatched up the Sharp's rifle. They moved to the window together. Below them, on the moonlit road, shapes gathered dark as the broken pines. Faces half covered, eyes glinting like cold stars. Sella watched them spread out around the shack. She counted 10, maybe 12. More shapes in the tree line. More waiting. Darla's breath misted the glass. "Tell me you've got some miracle tucked in that stage of yours." Sella exhaled slow. "No miracle. Just grit. She felt Darla's grin before she saw it. "That's what I was hoping you'd say." They slipped out the back, boots sinking into frost-hardened dirt. The wind smelled of gun oil and horses, of blood not yet spilled. In that hush before the world cracked open again, Selah's pulse steadied. Her mother's words found her. "If you're going to stand, stand so your shadow swallows theirs whole." She turned to Darla, eyes dark and alive. "Let's remind them who owns this road." And when the first shot cracked, the shadows answered back. The first shot cracked the night wide open, snapping through the cold air like the strike of a match on dry pine. Selah Hawk felt the bark splinter just inches from her shoulder as she pressed her back to the station's rough wall. Darla's rifle spoke next a deep, punishing boom that carried across the clearing. Somewhere in the dark, a man screamed, and the shadows shifted, the bandits pulling back into the thin cover of pine, trunks and snow-bent scrub. Selah tasted blood where her teeth had bitten her tongue. Her breath came slow, deliberate. She leaned out just far enough to see the shapes moving, 1, 2, 4 men creeping toward the corral, hoping to flank the shack. Darla crouched beside her, reloading with the same calm she always carried, as if the world would slow itself for her hands. "Left side," Selah murmured. Darla nodded, sighted down the barrel, and fired. The crack echoed through the hills. 1. Shadow dropped, limbs kicking the dirt. The return fire came at once, wild, hurried shots that chewed into the corner of the shack. Splinters stunned Selah's cheek. She pressed closer to the wall, hand tightening around the revolver's worn grip. She thought of her mother's voice. "Stand, so your shadow swallows theirs." She rose from her crouch just enough to sight the second man at the corral fence. The pistol bucked in her hand. He spun, fell, his hat rolling away into the snow. A heartbeat of silence. Then a voice rose harsh, low, echoing off the trees. "You think you can hold us off forever, Hawk? This road don't belong to you." "It never did." Selah didn't answer. She leaned her head back against the wall, felt the tremor in her bones, and forced it quiet. Darla's breath ghosted in the cold, but her eyes shone with a hard light. "Bastards'll rush us before dawn," Darla said. "Ain't enough bullets for 'em all." Selah's lips twitched a ghost of a smile. "Then we'll have to make our shots count." She ducked to the other side of the window, peering through a crack in the boards. In the moonlight, she saw shapes moving at the tree line. 3 men huddled together, arguing in hushed tones. She could almost hear them. Cowards and gamblers, torn between pride and sense. They'd come on sooner or later. Hunger for blood always overpowered fear out here. Inside the shack, the old agent who'd given them shelter now crouched near the stove, a battered scattergun shaking in his hands. He caught Selah's eye and tried to speak, but his voice cracked. Instead, she knelt beside him. "Stay down. If they get inside, aim for the chest. Don't hesitate." He nodded, eyes wide and wet, teeth chattering from more than the cold. Darla touched her shoulder. "We need more cover." They slipped back outside, boots crunching on frost. Selah's breath misted in the lamplight that leaked from the broken shutters. The coach loomed in the darkness beside the corral, a hulk of cracked wood and iron, its wheels half buried in the drift. She could see the glint of mailbags still strapped tight inside. Her promise to deliver them felt like a distant thing now. The road demanded more from her tonight. Darla moved first, shouldering open the back of the coach. She tossed out crates, bags, anything that might serve as a barricade. Selah crouched behind the corral gate, watching the tree line. A muzzle flash flickered to the right. She fired back, aiming for the spark, and was rewarded with a shout of pain. She shifted closer to the coach. Darla dragged 2 crates into a rough barrier, dropped behind them, and reloaded her sharps with practiced hands. Together they formed a line of splintered wood and steel, flimsy against the promise of what was coming. The wind carried the smell of pine sap and gun smoke. Sella felt it catch in her throat, a reminder of every mile she'd ever driven, every pass she'd crossed, with death nipping at her heels. She could feel the road watching her, waiting to see if she'd break. She would not dot. Another voice called from the trees. "You got no more road, Hawk. Just give us the gold. We'll let you ride out no worse than you already are." Darla barked a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "And I'll bet your word's worth the bullet it'd take to carve it in your hide." Sella scanned the shadows. She could make out a man crouched behind an old stump, rifle braced on the splintered wood. She drew in a slow breath, leveled her revolver, and squeezed the trigger. The stump exploded in chips. The man stumbled sideways, clutching his shoulder. A roar of return fire answered bullets chewing into the crates, the side of the coach. Sella ducked low, shoulder pressed to the wheel's iron rim. Her ears rang. Darla pulled her down just before another shot punched a splinter from the crate an inch above her head. "You're a damn magnet for trouble," Darla muttered, voice sharp but steady. Sella gave her a grim smile. "You came back, didn't you?" Darla snorted, eyes never leaving the sight of her rifle. "Yeah, I'm the bigger fool." Another pause, a lull that settled over the clearing like the hush before a hammer falls. Sella could hear the low murmur of the bandits regrouping, the scrape of boots on frozen dirt. "Darla," she said, "when they rush us, we don't hold here." Darla's eyes flicked to hers. "Then where?" Sella's gaze cut toward the old station. "Inside. Narrow door, one at a time. Makes them bleed for every step." Darla nodded once. "Good plan, bad odds." Sella's jaw tightened. "They always are." She rose just enough to glimpse the shapes pushing forward, now slow. Hunched shadows, guns low, voices low, curses in the cold. They thought the coach would shield them. Thought she'd stay pinned behind it. Sella slid her revolver back into its holster and unslung the shotgun she'd hidden beneath the driver's bench. The wood felt familiar against her palm, old and battered, but like an old friend that never failed. She turned to Darla. "When I break left, cover my back. Keep 'em off me long enough to get that door closed." Darla bared her teeth. "Don't die on me, Hawk. Same to you." They moved together, fluid as dancers in a song only they could hear. Sella lunged from the barricade, boots hammering. Frozen dirt, the shotgun raised. A figure lunged for her, young, wild eyes, a blade glinting. She fired once, point blank. He fell backward, arms flailing. Darla's rifle cracked over her shoulder, punching holes in the dark. A second man staggered, went down. The rest fell back for a breath, just long enough for Sella to reach the door. She spun, braced her shoulder against the wood, and fired both barrels wide to scatter the shapes. Darla slammed in behind her, shoving the agent back from the hearth. "Barricade." "It," Sella snapped. They dragged the stove in front of the door, iron legs scraping. Outside, the bandits regrouped, shouting now, words lost under the wind and the pounding of blood in her ears. The old agent clutched his scattergun, teeth bared in terror. Sella pressed her back to the stove, shotgun open, reloading shells with fingers that trembled only when she let them. "You hear that?" Darla hissed, ear pressed to a crack in the boards. Sella nodded. The sound was clear now. Hooves. More of them. Reinforcements. The leader had sent for the rest. A fresh wave to crush two tired women in a half-rotted shack. Sella forced the fear down. She looked at Darla. "We hold until daylight. After that, the road's ours again." Darla cracked a grin sharp and fierce. "You and your damn road." Sella leaned her head back against the stove, letting the warmth seep into her spine. "The road's all I've got." Darla's voice came softer, steady as the river. "Not anymore." Outside, the shapes moved again. Boots scraped frozen earth. Iron clicked. Shadows crowded the windows. Sella Hawk flexed her bruised hands around the while shotgun's grip. She could see it clear as the sunrise she'd swear to reach. The line she'd drawn was more than the mail, more than gold. It was every mile behind her and every mile ahead, all the way to the horizon they'd never see coming. When they came for her again, she'd stand. And the road would stand with her. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. Dawn didn't break so much as seep into the world-thin gray light slipping through cracks in the boarded-up windows of the shack. Sella Hawk sat with her back to the cold stove, shotgun laid across her knees, one boot pressed against the door, as if her heel alone could hold back the weight of the men outside. Darla dozed in snatches by the window, her rifle propped beside her, chin tucked to her chest. Even in sleep, her hand stayed close to the trigger. The old agent who'd taken them in was a ghost of himself now, curled in the corner with a blanket around his shoulders, eyes wide and unblinking. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind through the pines outside made him flinch. He looked at Sella sometimes like she was the storm that had torn his life in two. Sella didn't blame him. Trouble was hers to carry. Always had been. She leaned her head back, letting her eyes close for a moment. The wind whistled through the gaps in the boards, carrying voices. Low, angry. Men who'd been forced to wait all night while the fire in their bellies turned to acid. She could hear the horses stamping, the scrape of boots on frozen earth. They'd come again soon, angrier, braver in the dawn's thin light. Darla stirred, dragging her hat lower over her eyes. "How long you think we got?" "Long as it takes," Sella said. Her voice felt raw in her throat. If they were gonna break and run, they'd have done it by now. Darla grunted, straightened, and checked her rifle's chamber. The metallic click echoed like a promise. "Next push'll be the worst," Sella nodded. She ran her thumb over the battered stock of the shotgun. It had belonged to her father, passed down like a curse. Every notch in its wood had a name. She tried not to think about the ones she might have to add before the sun was high. A sudden bang against the door rattled the stove against her back. The agent whimpered in his corner. Sella didn't flinch. Another voice rose, clearer now, just outside. "Hawk." The syllables carried a grin she could hear but not see. "You got any sense? You'll come out now. Give us the gold. Maybe we let you live." Sella barked a laugh that had no humor in it. "If you're gonna lie, do it better than that." Silence. Then a fist hammered the boards again. "You think you're gonna ride out of this? There's 30 men out here. You got 2 guns and a ghost in the corner." Darla stood now, bracing her shoulder to the window's edge. "Ghost's got a scattergun, so watch your mouth," she muttered. Sella looked at the agent. He clutched the old gun to his chest like a talisman. But when he met her eyes, there was something steadier in him, a flicker of the boy he'd once been before the road turned him into a station keeper in the middle of nowhere. "You hold this door," she said. "Don't shoot unless they cross the threshold. You do, they'll run you down for the fun of it." He nodded, jaw clenched tight. "Yes, ma'am." She turned back to Darla. "We break the side window. Draw them that way. If they split, we might get the coach turned around." Darla raised an eyebrow. "You mean run?" "I mean get the mail through. That's the job." Sella's voice was flat as the iron barrel across her lap. Outside, footsteps shuffled closer. Voices rose, half shouts, half laughs that never quite reached their eyes. They'd waited all night with whiskey in their veins and the promise of gold in their pockets. Now they were ready to spill blood for it. Darla cracked the window with the butt of her rifle. Glass fell like ice. She squeezed the first shot through. The opening, one of the shapes in the dawn, folded, tumbling into the dirt. The return fire came like hail, ripping splinters from the walls, hammering the stove behind Sella's back. "Ready?" Darla shouted. Sella pumped the shotgun, boots digging into the floor. "Go!" They crashed through the side, boots skidding on the frozen ground. Darla pivoted, laying down fire that kept the bandits ducking behind scrub and old fence posts. Sella sprinted for the coach, its shape rising from the gloom like a promise and a threat all at once. Her hands found the brake lever, boots braced in the churned-up dirt. The horses snorted, eyes rolling white. They smelled the gunpowder, felt the fear in the air. She whispered to them words soft as a lullaby, a lie wrapped in calm. The lead mare tossed her head, but she held steady. Darla clambered onto the faille bench beside her. They're regrouping. We move now or we don't move at all. Sella's fingers gripped the reins. Hold on. They lurched forward, the wheels biting into frozen ruts. Shots snapped past them. One struck the iron trim by Darla's knee, showering sparks. Darla fired back, each blast echoing through the bare hills behind them. The station door slammed open. The agent stumbled out, scattergun up. He fired both barrels into a knot of men too close behind the coach. Two fell. He turned, trying to reload, but the shadows swarmed him. Sella saw him drop the gun, swinging his fists, saw the glint of a knife flash once, twice. She made herself look away. The horses screamed into their harnesses, foam flying from their bits. The coach crested the rise and thundered down the other side, the frozen ground rattling every board and bolt. Darla braced herself with one boot on the dash rail. "Where's the road bend next?" "Half a mile," Sella yelled. "If they don't cut us off first." Shots echoed behind them. A bullet struck the rear wheel's iron rim with a ring like a funeral bell. Sella felt the reins burn her palms as she forced the horses to the left, aiming for the narrow pass where the hills pinched the trail into a throat no man could ride two abreast. They hit the bend too fast. The coach lurched, one wheel lifting off the ground before slamming back down. Sella tasted blood again, bit her tongue clean through this time. But she didn't slack the reins. The wind ripped past them, carrying the shouts of men trying to close the distance on horseback. Darla twisted around, eyes narrow against the wind. "They're splitting. Some riding ahead to cut us off." Sella's breath steamed in the dawn. "Then we run him down." She stood in the footwell, bracing her legs wide, the reins biting so deep into her hands she felt the skin peel. The horses strained, hooves striking sparks on the frost-hardened ground. The pass loomed ahead, dark and narrow as a throat waiting to swallow them whole. The first bandit appeared at the bend's mouth, horse rearing, rifle leveled. Darla fired, missed. The man wheeled his horse sideways, trying to block them. Sella let out a roar that came from someplace so deep inside her. It scraped her bones raw. She snapped the reins. The lead mare surged forward, white foam flying from her mouth. The coach slammed through the gap like a battering ram. The bandit's horse spooked sideways, taking him with it into the brush. Sella didn't look back. She kept her boots planted, the reins alive in her hands, the wheels hammering the dirt like thunder. They burst through the pass. The hills fell away behind them. The land opened into a wide basin where the overland's trail ran straight as a gun barrel for 15 long miles to the next relay station. Darla whooped beside her, a ragged, savage sound that carried across the dawn. "Haul, you bastards! Let's see if you can ride faster than Hawk's team." Sella didn't waste breath answering. She could feel the horses' flanks quiver, the coach's wheels wobbling as they rattled over every frozen rut. The mailbags thumped behind her, strapped tight to their rails. The gold was still there too, though, in that moment. It felt like the heaviest weight she'd ever carried. A shot cracked past her ear close, too close. Darla fired back, but the men behind them were riding hard, closing the gap yard by yard. Sella leaned forward, her voice raw. "Come on, girl, come on. Give me one more mile." She didn't know if she spoke to the lead mare or herself. Didn't matter. The road answered her the only way it could, by keeping her wheels turning, her breath burning, her name alive on the wind. In that ragged dawn, she made her promise again. She'd get the mail through. She'd get Darla through. She'd ride. This rode until her bones turned to dust under its wheels. The chase thundered on. Sella Hawk stood in the box of her stagecoach, whip cracked high, eyes sharp as the horizon, daring the world to take one more piece of her before she delivered. The rest, and the road, the old, hungry road, carried her forward, mile after bloody mile. The gorge waited in the dark, like an open wound in the land, black stone walls dropping sheer and cold into a chasm that swallowed sound. Sella Hawk stood at the rim, boots sunk into frost, her breath a thin cloud that drifted out over the abyss. Behind her, Darla crouched among the rocks, her Sharp's rifle braced across a fallen log. Eyes narrowed to slits. The old station agent huddled close, shoulders shuddering as he peeked back down the ridge. Somewhere below, the dogs barked, voices sharp and hungry. Sella could hear the men's shouts, the crack of branches as they picked their way upward. The wind carried it all to her like a promise. They're coming. They will not stop. She pressed a palm to the cold stone, grounding herself. Her mother's words flickered in her mind. Bend the road or break on it. She had bent so many roads, run so many miles. But this one would hold. Darla's voice cut through the hush. I count 7 close, more strung out behind. There. Tired though, spooked. Sella nodded, never taking her eyes from the gorge. They know we're wounded but not broken. That rattles a man more than any bullet. The agent swallowed hard. I can't fight him. I can't. Sella laid her hand on his shoulder. You can hold a gun. You aim when they're close. You fight for your breath, nothing more. He nodded, though his eyes were all whites, wide as the moon. Below, the dogs fell silent. Sella stiffened, eyes darting to Darla. A shape moved among the brambles, crouched low, creeping up the spine of the ridge. Another behind it. Lantern light bobbed farther down the trail, pale eyes in the dark. They'll fan out, flush us, Darla murmured. What's the plan, Road Queen? Sella lifted her revolver, thumbed back the hammer until it clicked. Hold the line here. Make 'em climb for every step. If they push too close, we draw into the drop. Darla's grin was cold as the stone underfoot. Give 'em a choice. Between our bullets or the gorge. The first man came into view, a big shape, thick shoulders wrapped in a patchwork coat. He stopped, sniffed the air, then lifted his pistol toward the rocks. Sella fired. The revolver barked, the man jerked sideways, vanished into the brush with a low grunt. His shout set off the rest. Voices rose in the trees, rough curses, boots scrambling on stone. Another muzzle flash winked from the dark mist wide. Darla's rifle cracked once, twice. A shape tumbled down the slope, crashing through dry brush. The dogs howled again, confused by the gunfire. Sella dropped behind the log, knees grinding into gravel. She reloaded with the speed that came only when your heartbeat matched the road's rhythm. She could see it now, more shadows drifting in. The trees, some hanging back, some too hungry for blood to wait. Darla pressed her shoulder to Sella's. They'll rush us when they get desperate. Let 'em, Sella said. We'll give 'em something to remember. The agent whimpered. What if they come from the side? Sella caught his gaze. Then you put your barrel to their gut and squeeze. A shot cracked close. Dirt spat from the ground a foot from Darla's boot. She shifted, sighted down her rifle, fired. The echo bounced. Between the gorge walls, turned one man's charge into a limp heap. Sella rose, fired twice. One shot caught a hat clean off. The other found a shoulder. Screams faded into the wind. The dogs howled again, closer now. Lanterns bobbed up the path. Too many to count at a glance. Darla spat. Too many. They bleed like any other, Sella said. She heard the sharp click behind her, metal on metal. The agent had braced himself against the stone, both hands trembling on the scattergun. But his eyes were clearer now, something sparking in that hollow place fear had carved out. Good man, she said. He swallowed, nodded. Long as you got my back. Sella's answer was a small, tight smile. always. The shadows lunged as one a rough, snarling charge. Darla's rifle barked, the scattergun roared, Sella's revolver cracked like a whip. One shape spun and fell. Another staggered into the open, eyes wide, a knife flashing. Sella stepped into him, shoved the barrel under his chin, squeezed. Thunder in her hand, blood on her cheek. The agent howled, the scattergun bucking his shoulder as he sent another man sprawling backward into the brush. For a breath, the charge faltered. But fresh shapes filled the gap, boots scraping granite, curses spit through clenched teeth. Sella ducked low, caught Darla's sleeve. To the edge, she said. They moved together, slipping behind a row of boulders that marked the rim. Below them, the gorge dropped away, a black throat ready to swallow, every soul foolish enough to stand too close. Darla reloaded with blood-slick hands. This is it, huh? Not yet, Sella breathed. One man lunged through the rocks, eyes wide, hatchet raised. The agent screamed, fired, missed. Sella slammed her shoulder into the man's chest, drove him back until his boots slipped on the frost. He flailed, caught air, and was gone, a muffled scream swallowed by stone. The others froze. The drop yawned at their feet, a reminder that the road's end didn't always wait on a bullet. Darla raised her rifle. Who's next? The shadows wavered. Some cursed. Some stepped back. Sella lifted her voice, low but strong enough to cut the wind. This ridge is mine. This road is mine. You want it? Come take it. A new voice rose from the dark, a calm drawl that made the men part like water. Figures stepped through. Tall, coat lined with fur, a long rifle slung across his back. His face was half covered by a scarf, but his eyes glinted with a mean light. Sella Hawk, he said, rolling her name around his tongue like whiskey. Been riding hard to find you. Darla's rifle shifted. Who the hell's this? Sella's grip tightened on her revolver. Ghost, if there's any justice. The man tipped his hat, mock polite. They call me Crowder. Heard you've been making a fool of my boys, burning stations, killing good men. Good men don't hunt women on the road, Sella said. Crowder's smile didn't reach his eyes. All the same, you got something that's mine. This ridge? Darla barked a laugh. Come claim it. Crowder glanced at his men, then at the drop yawning at his back. You think this cliff saves you? You'll run out of lead before I run out of dogs. Sella stepped forward, close enough that the wind whipped her coat against his boots. You want my road, Crowder? Step up. His hand hovered at his belt. A pistol hung there, old, bone-handled, worn like an heirloom. He tilted his head, eyes cold. You challenging me, Hawk? I'm giving you a choice, just like the gorge behind you. For a moment, the wind stilled. Even the dogs fell quiet. The men watched, breath steaming in the cold. Crowder's fingers twitched. Sella saw it, the tremor that gave him away. She waited. Breath locked behind her teeth. He moved. The pistol lifted. Sella's gun barked once, a single shot. The echo cracked through the gorge, bounced off the stone like the promise of more. Crowder stumbled. He looked down at his chest, eyes wide with betrayal. He gasped, blood on his lips, then pitched backward, boots scraping stone, arms windmilling. The gorge took him without a sound. No one moved. No one breathed. Sella turned her gun on the rest. This ridge is mine. This road is mine. Any man who stays meets the same end, the dogs whined. The men shifted, boots backing away. No one stepped forward. Darla's voice was soft thunder. Go home, boys, they went. One by one, they slipped back. Down the ridge, shadows swallowed by the trees. The agent sank to his knees, the scattergun clattering beside him. Sella let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Darla slapped her shoulder, rough but real. You did it again, fool. Sella didn't smile, but the lines around her eyes softened. The road's ours for tonight. The wind shifted, carrying. Away the stink of gunpowder and fear. Far below, the gorge held its secrets. And Selahawk stood at the rim, the road's keeper, the last shadow you'd want to cross in the dark. They turned together, back to the dawn just starting to bleed. Behind the hills. And the road waited, unbroken, under their boots. Dawn bled slow and ragged over the ridge, its pale light catching the raw edges of boot tracks, bullet scars in the stone, and the frost that clung to Selahawk's sleeves like a last reminder that the night had teeth. She stood at the rim of the gorge, hat pushed back, watching the men who'd tried to own the road slink away into the trees below, wounded, leaderless, carrying Crowder's ghost on their backs. Behind her, Darla kicked dirt over the ashes of their small fire. The old station agent sat on a boulder near the horses, blanket draped around his shoulders, scattergun balanced across his knees like a promise he'd never forget how to keep. Kofi'd be worth its weight in gold right now, Darla grumbled. Voice husky from the cold and gun smoke, Sela said nothing. Her eyes tracked the tree line, making sure every shape moving away stayed moving. The ridge was quiet now, but quiet out here could turn me in a heartbeat. You're thinking too. Hard, Darla said behind her. You'll wear grooves in that skull. Sela tipped her head just enough to catch her friend's grin. Not thinking, listening. To what? Sela let her eyes drift shut for half a breath. The breeze combed the brambles, teased the edge of her coat. The road whispered back, same as always, words no one else could hear. She'd been listening since she was 17, when the dust of the overland first claimed her boots and the sound of gunfire taught her what silence really cost. They'll come back, Sela said. Darla's grin faded. Always do. A flicker of movement down the trail made both women drop into crouches behind the rocks, guns out before breath could frost the air. A figure stumbled into the clearing mud to his knees, hat gone, one arm hugging a small canvas bundle to his chest. The boy. The stray Sela had sent off with her revolver and a last scrap of hope. He froze when he saw their barrels leveled at his heart. It's me, he gasped, voice raw. Don't shoot. Darla dropped her sights with a snort. Could have been clearer, pup. Sela holstered her gun but didn't relax. You make it clean? The boy nodded, face pale under a smear of dried blood. I circled wide, waited till they quit looking. Found this in their camp. He held out the bundle with both hands, like an offering to some mountain god. Sela took it, unwrapping the rough canvas. Inside lay a scatter of coins, a few watches, papers marked with company seals, mail letters meant for families 2 towns over, wages stolen off dead men. Her jaw clenched tight enough to ache. They've been hitting the line for weeks, the boy said, voice shaking. I heard him talking. They never planned to let you live. Crowder said you were the only thing standing between him and the overland contract. Darla barked a laugh that held no humor. Gorge must have looked real wide when he hit bottom. Sela tied the canvas shut again, eyes distant. It won't stop with Crowder, the boy swallowed. What do we do now? We run the road, Sela said. Simple as gravel under boots. We run it till they learn it's not for sale. The boy glanced at the battered stagecoach where it sat half hidden in the scrub, at the gorge's edge. 2 wheels cracked. 1 horse gone, the other trembling but alive. That thing won't make the next ridge, Darla chuckled. She patch it, she always does. Sela moved to the coach, fingers brushing the dented iron where bullets had bitten deep. She felt the mail sack still tied under the bench of promise, waiting to be delivered. The horse nickered low, ears flicking. She stroked its neck, whispering nothing at all. Darla slung her rifle over her shoulder, stepping closer. Road's gonna get meaner, Hawk. You know that. It's always mean, Sela said. It's the people who forget that. The boy hovered near the fire's dead coals, arms wrapped around himself. He looked so small in the dawn, smoke rising from his breath like the last of his ghosts leaving him behind. You got a name? Sela asked. He hesitated. Aaron. Well, Aaron, Darla said, nudging him with her boot. You plan to stand there till spring? Or you ridden? He blinked. Ridden? With you? Sela didn't smile. She never did when it came to the road's rules. We run the mail, we protect what's ours. You want that? Earn it. Aaron nodded, too fast, eyes wet but fierce. I won't run again. Good. Darla cuffed him lightly on the shoulder. You're allowed one mistake. After that, you're on your own 2 feet or you're buried under him. The boy looked to Sela, searching for something steadier than Darla's sharp grin. Sela held his stare, saw the tremor in his fingers, the bite marks on his lip where he'd chewed fear down to the bone. She reached into her coat, drew the revolver. He'd given back and pressed it into his hands. Keep it, she said. Next time you aim, you finish it. He nodded, jaw tight. Yes, ma'am. Sela glanced at the old agent, who had finally climbed to his feet, blinking at the sunrise like he'd never seen one sober. You get back to Mason's Rest, she told him. Tell anyone who asks the line still runs. The road's not closed. He chuckled, shoulders shaking under his blanket. They won't believe it. Doesn't matter if they do, Sela said. She turned to the coach, Darla and Aaron falling in behind her. They will when they see us roll in. They hitched the horse, braced the cracked axle as best they could with a splintered plank. Darla climbed up beside Sela, rifle resting across her knees. Aaron scrambled up behind the mail sacks, knees knocking together but eyes fixed forward. The wheels creaked as Sela flicked the reins, voice low but clear as a gunshot in a church. Giddy up, the battered stagecoach rolled forward. Its iron wheels bit the frost-bitten trail, carrying them away from the gorge's edge and back into the winding miles that waited. The road opened its throat to them, miles of dust and danger, of shadows waiting in every bend. Sela Hawk let it all come. She had her gun. She had Darla's aim. And now she had a boy who'd learned the hard way that mercy on the road was worth more than silver. The sun rose higher, catching the battered coach in a wash of gold. Ahead, the pass narrowed again, a thin cut through the pines that smelled of snow and old secrets. Somewhere beyond it, more men waited, more guns, more reasons to turn back. Sela did not turn back. Her hands flexed on the reins, her breath steady in the morning chill. She could feel the road listening, humming under the wheels. And when the road spoke, she listened. Always. The cold held fast to the pass as Sela Hawk guided the battered stagecoach deeper into the pine-thick hills. The dawn had given them gold. Midday took it back, leaving nothing but gray sky and a wind that whispered threats through the branches. The coach rattled over ruts and half-frozen mud, each wheel groaning like an old wound trying to heal in bad weather. Darla sat on the driver's bench, one boot braced against the rail, eyes narrowed under the brim of her hat. Her rifle lay across her knees, but her hands drummed a restless tattoo on the stock. Behind them, Aaron sat on the mail sacks, coat pulled tight around his shoulders, the revolver resting heavy on his thigh. He hadn't said much since they'd left the gorge. You think he'll hold? Darla asked low, voice barely carrying over the creak of the coach. Sela flicked the reins, jaw tight. He's green, but he's got grit. Darla's laugh was soft, sharp. Grit don't mean much when the lead starts flying. Sela didn't answer. The road answered for her, a sharp bend where the pines pressed close, shadows deep enough to hide a man or 3. She slowed the team, letting the horses pick their steps. Her eyes swept the tree line, looking for the twitch of a coat hem, the glint of a barrel. Aaron's voice startled her. What if they come back, the ones from the gorge? Darla twisted to look at him, one eyebrow raised. Then you aim straight and don't blink. Sela's voice cut through the hush. They will come back, not today, but they will. The road never forgets an insult. They cleared the bend. A crow flapped up from the brush, startled into the low sky. No men, no gunfire. But the weight didn't lift from Sela's chest. It never did. They rolled on through the pines until the trees gave way to a small clearing. Battered sign nailed to a leaning post. Miller's Crossing. A half-collapsed barn stood near the road, its roof buckled under years of snow and neglect. An old watering trough leaned on its side. Darla eyed the ruin. Hell of a place to break an axle. Sela cracked the reins, guiding the horses toward the barn's shell. Better to fix what needs fixing than ride it till it breaks for good. Aaron hopped down first when they stopped, boots sinking into the thawing mud. He circled to the back, checking the lashings on the mail sacks like he'd seen Sela do 100 times in a day. He caught her watching and squared his shoulders. "You want it done right, don't you?" he asked. A flicker of a smile ghosted Sela's mouth. "That's the only way we stay alive." Inside the barn, the smell hit them first old straw and the must of rot. A single shaft of daylight pierced the roof, falling across a skeleton of a wagon, half its spokes chewed by mice. Sela crouched near the coach's wheel, running her palm over the splintered brace. "We can shore it for a few more miles," she murmured. Darla dropped to a knee beside her. "If we had iron, we'd fix it right. Iron's 3 towns south. We ride what we've got." Aaron hovered near the doors, eyes on the tree line. "What if someone's been here?" Darla chuckled. "If they're here, they're quiet bastards." Sela's head snapped up. Not at the barn, but at the hush that fell outside. Too deep, too sudden. Even the crows had gone quiet. A single hoof scrape on stone. She shoved Darla hard. "Down!" The first shot punched through the barn wall, slamming into the rotted wagon. Wood splintered like a bone. Aaron yelped, diving behind a feed bin. Darla rolled to her belly, sighted through a crack in the wall. "Ridgeline!" she hissed. Sela dragged the scattergun from the coach's side rail, cocked it with a snap that sounded like thunder. She crawled to the window, peered through a gap. Shadows on the ridge, 5, maybe 6 men. One had a battered hat, too wide to be local. Outsiders, mercenaries. "Aaron," she barked. "Stay down. Keep that door covered. If they break the line, you drop him." The boy's knuckles were white around the revolver, but he nodded. A bullet snapped overhead, punching daylight through the shingles. Darla fired back, her sharps kicking against her shoulder. A cry echoed off the rocks. "Think they're Crowder's boys?" Darla asked. Sela shook her head. "Crowder's dead. But the money behind him ain't." Outside, voices barked orders. They were trying to box them in 2 shapes, slipping down the left, hugging the brush. Sela braced the scattergun on the windowsill. Waited. One man stood, rifle low, grin flashing through the trees. She fired. He dropped like a sack of feed. The other cursed, ducked low. Aaron fired, then wild but loud. A second later, another shot rang out from the ridge, so close it clipped the barn door. He flinched but didn't drop the gun. "Good boy," Darla shouted. The attackers regrouped. A voice rose, a woman's this time, sharp and cold. "Sela Hawk," it called. "You in there?" Sela pressed her cheek to the wood, peering through the splinters. She saw her then. Tall, hair tied back tight, a pistol in each hand, coat flapping in the wind like a flag nobody pledged to. She stood on the ridge as if the earth owed her its bones. Come to finish what Crowder couldn't. Sela called back. The woman laughed, a sound like glass shattering. Crowder was an idiot, but his debt's mine to collect. You owe the line, Hawk, and the line collects. You want the road? Sela's voice carried across the clearing, low and certain. You come take it. The woman spat into the dirt. Burn him out. A new crackle, then fire, licking at the brush she'd piled at the barn's back wall. Smoke curled inside, bitter. And gray, Darla cursed. Not again. Sela slammed the scattergun into Darla's hands. Cover the ridge. Aaron, with me. She hauled the boy up by his collar. dragging him toward the coach's open door. The horses stamped, wild-eyed at the scent of smoke. Sella's fingers found the harness, snapping buckles free with the precision of a woman who'd learned to work while bullets flew. Aaron choked on the smoke curling under the eaves. Where do we run?" "We don't run," Sella said, voice calm as the wind in the pines. "We ride." She shoved the last harness strap into place, grabbed Aaron's collar, and flung him up onto the bench. Darla stumbled out next, coughing, eyes burning. "We go now." Sella barked. The coach lurched forward just as the fire found dry hay. Flame whooshed up the back wall. A fresh volley of shots cracked from the ridge, but the horses bolted, fear and reins guiding them down the narrow trail away from Miller's Crossing. Sella hauled herself onto the driver's bench, Darla already firing over her shoulder. Aaron braced behind the mailbags, gun gripped like a lifeline. The clearing vanished. Behind them, swallowed by flame and gun smoke. The road bent downhill, rattling their bones, branches whipping past so close they drew blood. Sella hunched over the reins, eyes locked on the next mile. Always the next mile. Her voice was a growl in the wind. "They want my road? They better learn I don't give it easy." The battered stagecoach rattled down the narrow trail, pine branches clawing at the wheels like hands, trying to drag them back into the smoke and bullets. They'd just outrun. Sella Hawk held the reins tight enough that the leather bit into her palms, the slap of the traces echoing through the canyon as the horses thundered forward. Every jolt of the broken axle threatened to pitch them off the trail and into the gorge that shadowed the road to the east. Behind her, Darla crouched on the footrail, half-turned with her rifle braced across the mail sacks. Her eyes never left the brush they'd burst from minutes before. Once, twice, she raised the barrel, then let it drift down. No muzzle flash yet. Just the distant crackle of the barn fire dying behind them, carried on the wind like a threat that wasn't finished yet. Aaron sat wedged between the sacks, the revolver gripped so tight his knuckles looked like river stones. His breath came in sharp gasps, steam rising as the cold slapped the panic back down his throat. He met Sella's eyes for a moment and found no softness there, just the same flint that had driven them through the gorge, the same line in her jaw that told him this road would break him or bind him to it forever. Darla spit over the side. "They'll be on us before dusk." "I know," Sella said. The wind tore the words from her lips, but Darla heard them. "We can't outrun them." "So we don't?" Darla asked, eyes glinting. She was smiling, just barely. A Wolf's grin, Sella guided the horses around a washed-out bend where the trail narrowed to a spine. Below, the gorge opened its mouth, black water running through stone teeth far below. She smelled snow in the wind now, the old scent of winter trying to claw its way back. Before spring could dig in, Aaron twisted in his seat. "Where are we going?" Sella flicked the reins, not looking at him. "Carver's Bluff." Darla barked a laugh that cracked like gunfire. "That pile of rocks and ghosts?" Sella's eyes stayed forward. Nobody follows a coach into Carver's Bluff unless they want to leave pieces of themselves behind. The boy looked from one woman to the other, confusion creasing his brow. "What's Carver's Bluff?" "Once was a mining camp," Darla said, checking her rifle's breech. "Tunnels like veins, deep and hungry. Men died there before the gold ran dry. Now it's just holes in the rock and stories to scare drunks in saloons." Sella's voice was quiet but steady. "They want to hunt us? Then they can come down into the dark and find out what hunts back." The coach jolted as a rock caught under the bad wheel. Wood groaned, iron shrieked. Sella bit back a curse, easing the horses onto a flatter stretch that coiled up into the hills. The sky was falling in around them, now gray clouds gathering, sun buried behind the teeth of the pines. They stopped just short of the bluff when the first snow started. Tiny flakes, dry as salt, riding the wind in little circles before they settled in the ruts the stage had cut. Sela drew the team up in the shelter of a boulder that had split centuries ago, wide enough to hide the coach's shape from the trail behind. Darla dropped down, landing light on her boots. She squinted through the falling snow back the way they'd come. You reckon they'll wait for morning? They think we're cornered, Sela said. They'll come tonight. Aaron slid down beside Darla, revolver tucked tight against his chest. How many? Sela's eyes flicked from the trail to the boys. Pale face. Enough. She jumped down from the bench, shoulders rolling to loosen the knots that had grown there since the gorge. Her fingers traced the revolver's grip at her hip. The metal was warm from her body, a promise she never let herself forget. Darla cracked. Her neck, the sound loud in the hush between snowflakes. We wait here, they'll box us in. Same damn fire, different barn. Sela nodded. We take it below, Aaron frowned. Below? Sela turned, pointing through the falling snow to where a raw scar of earth yawned open between two granite shoulders. Old shaft, its timbers rotted, but wide enough to swallow a man, a coach, maybe an army stupid enough to follow. You ever fight in tunnels, boy? Darla asked, a grin curling one corner of her mouth. Aaron shook his head. No, ma'am. Darla slapped his shoulder, not unkind. Then you'll learn quick. Sela moved to the horses first, pressing her palm to each flank, murmuring words no one could hear. They'd run as far as they could run. Now they'd wait under the hill while the world above tried to dig them out. She unhitched the traces, let the horses nose through the snow toward a stand of scrub that would keep them hidden for a while. Together, they pulled the coach into the mouth of the shaft. The wheels complained, axle screeching, but the bluff swallowed the noise. Darkness gathered fast. It smelled of old rock, cold earth, and the ghosts Darla had promised. Inside, the tunnels yawned out in all directions. Timbers half-rotted, walls scratched with pick marks left by men who'd died, with their dreams clutched tight to their chests. Sela's boots scuffed old gravel as she guided them deeper. Here, she said, stopping near a break in the ceiling where a thin shaft of gray light still found its way down. We hold here. Aaron's voice cracked. What if they smoke us out? Sela laid her palm against the rock. They'll try. The bluff breathes, though. Too many cracks, too many holes. Smoke runs in circles down here. They'll choke on it before we do. Darla settled with her back to the coach's wheel, rifle across her knees, eyes fixed on the black mouth of the shaft. You really think they'll come down? Sela nodded. They think we're a payday. Money's heavy on a man's tongue. Makes him brave in ways he shouldn't be. Aaron crouched beside a pile of old timbers, revolver balanced on his knee. And if they don't? Darla shot him a grin that showed her teeth. Then we ride out before dawn. This place won't hold us. But it'll hold their bones. Silence settled in. Not the quiet of peace, but the hush of a storm gathering its breath. Above them, snow fell thicker now, muting the pines' whisper. The road bent around the bluff and waited. It always did. Sela closed her eyes for one heartbeat, listening to the stone and the wind whispering through the shafts like old secrets. Her mother's voice rose up, clear and sharp in the cold between her ribs. The road's yours. Sela, keep it or bury yourself in it. She opened her eyes to the black maw of the tunnel ahead. A promise as wide as the miles yet to come. They'd stand. And when the road called them back out of the dark, they'd ride again, gunfire, grit, and ghosts at their heels. The dark swallowed the echoes of the bluff's old tunnels, leaving only the hush of snow drifting through cracks overhead and the faint scrape of boots on loose gravel. Sela Hawk crouched with her back against the rotted timber brace, her revolver resting across her knee, eyes fixed on the tunnel's mouth. A single lantern flickered beside her boots, the flame barely enough to touch the walls. Darla sat a few feet away, legs stretched out, her rifle balanced across them. She'd rolled her shoulders loose an hour ago and hadn't shifted since. Even the boy, Aaron, had found a kind of stillness, though the tremor in his hands betrayed him each time the wind moaned through the shaft like some old ghost with no home. "How long you reckon before they find the way down?" Darla asked, her voice low, half swallowed by the stone. Selah listened for a heartbeat to the hush that pressed close around them. "They're not brave enough to come before midnight. The cold will turn their teeth sharp. Hunger'll do the rest." Aaron swallowed, shifting his weight. "You think they'll really crawl in here?" "They'll come," Selah said, "when they think we're tired enough to bleed easy." Above them, snow settled on pine branches that bowed under the weight. Each drop that found the tunnel's cracks melted and dripped in slow beats that counted off the time better than any clock. Selah's eyes drifted to the old shaft timbers. Some bore names, old prayers carved by hands that had long since rotted in shallow graves up the hill. The boy caught her stare. "Why'd you drag us down here?" Darla's laugh was soft, sharp. "You'd rather be up top in the open? Be my guest." Selah's gaze never wavered. "Light's their friend. Shadows are ours." Aaron ran his thumb along the revolver's grip. It looked too big for his hand, but he held it like he'd die before dropping it now. "I can't hear him." "Then listen better." Darla snapped, but her tone held no venom. "They're coming. That's the only truth that counts." Silence fell again. The lantern flame wavered when the wind shifted overhead, breathing through the cracked earth like something alive. Selah leaned her head back against the timber, eyes closing for a moment. In the dark behind her eyelids, the road lay out long and ragged, every mile behind them a scar she refused to let heal clean. A sound broke the hush boot scrape. Low curse, a stone kicked down the shaft. Aaron jerked upright, the revolver rising. Darla's rifle swung smooth to her shoulder, her breath a steady rhythm. Selah opened her eyes. She saw the first man step into the thin edge of lantern light. He was broad through the shoulders, face shadowed under the brim of a slouch hat. Behind him, two more shapes shifted, hesitant. Selah's voice cut through the dark, soft but sharp enough to draw blood. "You're trespassing." The man stopped. His hand drifted to the revolver at his hip, thumb tapping the hammer like a tick he'd never bothered to lose. "You're cornered, Hawk. Come out." "Maybe you walk," Darla snorted. "Tell your mother that lie when you see her next." The man's laugh was a cough that never found its punchline. "She always did like your mouth, Darla." Aaron's hands flexed on the grip. "There's more behind him," he whispered. Selah didn't blink. "You think the dark hides you? It don't. It feeds us." A flicker of doubt crossed the man's shadow. It lasted a heartbeat. Then his grin came back, wide and empty. "Fire him out." He lifted his revolver just as Darla's rifle cracked. His hat flew from his head, spinning into the shadows. He didn't fall, not right away. Selah's shot took him in the throat, a cough-turned scream swallowed by the bluff stone belly. Gunfire roared back. Lead chewed the old timbers, sparked. On stone, carved splinters from the rotted brace. Aaron flinched, but he didn't drop the gun. He squeezed the trigger once, twice wild shots, but loud enough to remind the dark that he had teeth too. The men behind the dead leader dropped. Low, shouting to each other. One lunged forward, a flicker of steel in his hand. Selah rose from her crouch like a shadow uncoiling. Her revolver bucked once. The man stumbled, knees cracking stone. Darla's rifle barked again, finishing what the bluff had started. "Left." Aaron gasped, swinging his revolver toward a narrow cut that split the shaft's wall. Another shape flickered there, crouched low. Darla turned her rifle, but the boy's shot found its mark first. The echo chased the scream all the way down to the mine's belly dot, then dash silence dot. It settled in, heavy and mean. Smoke from the gun barrels mingled with the old dust, curling into their lungs. Darla lowered her rifle, chest rising and falling in slow drags. Aaron's shoulders trembled. He let the revolver drop to his lap, breathing hard through his teeth. Selah didn't move. She stood there, eyes on the tunnel mouth, waiting for the bluff to speak again. When it didn't, she let her breath ease out. They'll pull back. Darla spat into the gravel. For now, Aaron's voice was thin. I hit him. I think I hit him. Sella looked at him, really looked. Saw the spark that hadn't been there when they dragged him out of the gorge's teeth. She gave him a single tight nod. You did. The boy sat back, shoulders pressed to the coach wheel. He grinned, just a flicker, gone as quick as it came. The bluff settled into itself again. Wind found its way through the old shafts, carrying voices that weren't quite words. Sella holstered her gun, fingers brushing the wood like a promise she'd keep drawing it until her bones turned to dust. Rest while you can, she said. They'll come again before dawn. Next wave'll be worse. Darla cracked her neck, rolling it slow. Good. I hate when they die easy. Aaron drew his knees to his chest, the revolver laid across them like a sleeping dog. Outside the shaft, snow kept falling, thin flakes that covered footprints fast. Buried old blood in the earth skin. Sella crouched near the tunnel mouth, eyes narrowed to the dark where the road bent away. She could feel it out there, just beyond the stone, waiting, watching, daring her to break before it did. She curled her fingers into the gravel, felt the cold bite into her palm. The bluff would hold, the road would hold. And when the light came again, so would she. Always. The cold had crept into the tunnels like a rumor that wouldn't die. It clung to Sella Hawk's breath as she crouched by the shaft's mouth, listening for the scrape of boots in the gravel, for the ragged cough of men too stubborn to leave well enough alone. Her knuckles brushed the stone, every scar on her hand remembering other nights just like this, dark, close, the waiting longer than the shooting ever was. Behind her, Darla kept to the shadows. She'd wedged herself into a split between two braces, a vantage that gave her rifle a clear line on the shaft and a slit to the old drift, where any fool might think to crawl through. She dozed for an hour, no more. Now her eyes flicked in the dark like a wolf scenting blood it hadn't drawn yet. Aaron hunched against the broken coach wheel, the revolver loose in his lap, head nodding. He startled awake every few minutes, his eyes snapping wide like he was trying to see the road out there through solid rock. Each time he met Sella's gaze, he forced a brave little nod. She didn't return it. There'd be time for comfort when the lead stopped flying. The wind above shifted. A flurry of snow fell through a break in the beams, landing on the boy's shoulder. He shivered, brushed it off. Sella's ears caught what the storm tried to hide a shuffle. A voice, hushed, rough-edged, like boots dragged through dry brush. She signaled once. Darla moved, silent as a thought. The rifle settled into place, a boot-scuffed stone just beyond the tunnel bend. Another followed. Two shapes, wide as doorframes, stepped into the lantern's rim. Not boys, not hungry drifters. Professionals, mercenaries, by the way their coats hid breastplates under canvas, by the way they crouched together, each covering the other's blind side. One lifted his chin, voice pitched soft. Hawk, you still got a choice. Walk out now. Give us the bags. Darla laughed, a rough bark that bounced off the stone. You lot think the road's for sale? Sella rose from her crouch, the revolver steady in her hand. No more words. The first mercenary smiled. It didn't touch his eyes. He lunged forward, gun low. Darla's shot cracked, catching his leg below the knee. He pitched sideways, screaming. The second fired wild, the flash carving shadows on the wall. Sella's shot found him high in the shoulder, spinning him into the brace where the butt of Darla's rifle smashed him silent. Aaron flinched behind the wheel, the echo ringing in his bones. He rose up, braced the revolver on the wheel rim. Another shape appeared at the shaft's fork, a thin man with a shotgun, eyes wide and feral. The boy's finger twitched. The gun jumped. The blast clipped stone, flaring sparks into the drift. The shotgun roared back, the pellets chewing through the Mail sat behind Sella's boot. Sella dropped low, fired twice. The shotgun fell with its owner, the tunnel reclaiming their noise with a hush that felt deeper than before. Smoke drifted in the lantern glow, curling around the rough timbers. Darla rolled her shoulders, breath misting. This lot's paid better than Crowder's boys. Aaron's hands shook as he lowered the gun. They'll come again, won't they? They're paid to, Darla said. Some debts don't forgive. Sella moved to the bodies, boots crunching over loose stone. She checked their coats, the shape of their gloves. Southern stitching, no local marks. Nothing to say who'd signed there. Death warrants, but the promise of a few gold eagles, and the wrong idea, that the road bent for any man. A gust above sent flakes through the shaft. The wind smelled like dawn somewhere far away too far. Sella crouched by the first man's collar, lifted it enough to see the emblem sewn just inside. A broken wheel, gold on black. Darla saw it too. Her voice was low thunder. Barlow's mark. Aaron swallowed. Who's Barlow? A man who never learned what the road costs, Sella said. She rose, brushed stone dust from her knees. He's buying hunters now, not just drifters, not gangs, professionals. Darla's mouth curled in something that wasn't quite a grin. Good. Means we're close to hurting him. The boy shifted behind her, shoulders hunched like he could hide from the cold that came down the shaft. We can't stay here forever. We won't, Sella said. She walked back to the coach, ran her palm along its battered side. Come dawn we roll. Aaron's brow creased. Where? They'll wait for us at the mouth. Darla cocked her head. Not if. They think we're already gone. Sella's fingers tapped the old boards. This bluff's veins run deep. Passages out the back. Miners cut M when the first cave-in came. Most are dead ends now. Not all. She looked at the boy, at the thin edge of fear in his eyes that hadn't yet hardened to something sharper. Get your rest. You'll need it. Darla settled back into her post, rifle across her knees. And if they smoke us? Sella's eyes flicked. To the narrow shaft that climbed to daylight. Smoke won't kill what's ready to burn. Outside, the storm thickened. Snow drifted in slow, soft curtains. The world buried its sins under white. Somewhere far above the bluff's mouth, boots crunched. A man cursed the cold. Another checked his gun. They'd come. They'd always come, but so long as the road still whispered in her blood, so long as there was breath to draw, Sella would meet them, and they'd learn again and again what the road cost when it fought back. The storm finally settled its white weight over Carver's Bluff, drifts pressing into every crack of the abandoned mine like the world itself wanted to bury the road's secrets. Deep underground, where the cold wind couldn't reach but the dread still could, Sella Hawk crouched by the split shaft that led out to the north slope. She ran her fingertips along the old pick marks and the rock trails of dead, men who'd thought they could bend the mountain to their will. Now they were just whispers under her boots. Behind her, Darla shoved a loose stone into the drift, testing its depth. Her breath puffed silver. The weight of the long night showed in her shoulders, but her eyes stayed sharp. Aaron huddled on. A crate, the revolver resting in his lap. He hadn't dozed since the last attack. Sleep had no place left in him. 4 ways out, you said, Darla murmured. How many still hold? Sella pressed her ear to the shaft wall, listening for the groan of settling stone, the hush of air. 2 are full of rubble. This one's narrow, but it breathes. Aaron drew his coat tight, knuckles white where they clutched the gun. And if they're waiting topside? Darla snorted. Then we teach them the bluff's second lesson. Don't follow ghosts underground. Sella turned, catching the boy's stare. Keep low, keep quiet. If you hear my boot stop, you stop. You see my hand drop, you drop. Understand? His nod was a shiver turned into an answer. They packed light. The battered mailbag slung across Darla's back. Ammunition pouches refilled from the dead men's belts. Sella slipped a small canvas packet of coins into Aaron's coat, so light it felt like a promise that weighed more than gold. They slipped into the north shaft just as the wind above shivered, carrying the faint snap of a voice another hunter. Counting his last lucky coins before the tunnel took him, the passage narrowed fast. Darla's shoulders brushed stone. Aaron kept one hand on the rough wall, the other on his revolver's grip. Sella led them by the small flicker of a single lantern, held low to break shadows without casting them too far ahead. In that hush, the road seemed far away, like a heartbeat muffled by earth, but Sella felt it. It thrummed in her bones the way. It always had, steady, cruel, patient. Half an hour in, they reached the old iron gate. Rust had turned the bars to lace. Darla kicked it once, gentle. It groaned open like a coffin waking. "Last time you were here, you shot a man right where you stand now," Darla said. Sella didn't look back. "He needed it." Aaron shivered. "Did he beg?" "Never had the chance." They stepped into the next drift, wider but thick with air gone stale. Sella crouched, lamp low, eyes on the powdery footprints that crossed each other like veins. "They've been through here." Checking for holes. Darla studied the faint dragged marks at the wall's base. Hauled something out, or someone. Aaron's. Swallow echoed. "We're walking through their graveyard." "Every road's a graveyard," Sella said. "Ours is just honest about it." A scrape behind them. Not bootstone on stone. Darla's rifle swung, the lantern's glow catching the glint of an eye, a shape pulling back into the black. "Hunter?" Aaron hissed. Sella's voice dropped to a razor's edge. "Rat, or a man who's forgotten how to stand upright." They moved faster. The drift narrowed, turned left, then broke into an old chamber where pickaxes had once chased a vein that died in the rock's gut. The roof had sagged years ago, spilling beams into a crosshatch of splintered supports. Sella stopped them there. Pressing a palm to Darla's back, "Hold." She crept forward, boots silent on stone. The lantern flicked light into the chamber's far corner. A man crouched there, knees to his chest, hands raw with frostbite. His eyes flicked wide when they caught the flame. "Don't shoot," he rasped. "I'm no one." "No one." Darla stepped past Sella, rifle steady. "No one always knows something." The man's teeth chattered, blood on his lips. "They sent me. Barlow's gold. Wanted me to watch for your boots. Said you'd come this way or you'd be ghosts for the crows." Sella squatted before him. Her shadow swallowed his face. "And? They're waiting. North slope, 5 or 6, maybe more. Got a torch line ready to smoke you out if you don't come easy." Aaron's breath caught. "What do we do?" Sella's eyes found Darla's. "We do what the road does. Split, bend, break them, before they know which way is true." She pressed her revolver's muzzle to the man's chest, just above his heart. "You run back. Tell them you saw us heading south drift. Tell them the bluff swallowed us." The man whimpered. "If they think I lied," Darla leaned close, voice like gravel, "they'll think you lived. That's worse for them." He ran. The shuffle of his boots faded into the dark. Aaron's eyes were wide as lantern glass. "You trust him?" "No," Sella said. "But I trust the bluff. It knows how to keep secrets." She rose, scanning the chamber walls. Her fingertips found a narrow split behind a collapsed brace, barely wide enough for a woman, let alone 3 with a rifle and a bag of blood-stained mail. Darla slapped the wood, tested it. "We can squeeze it. Get behind them." Aaron stared at the gap. "No light. How will we see?" Sella handed him the lantern, unlit now. "You don't. Same as the road." They slid sideways into the split. The stone pressed close. Breath scraped their lungs. Somewhere far ahead, the sound of bootsteps, men moving where no sane man should walk. In the belly of Carver's Bluff, Sella felt the road waiting, winding ahead through frost and dark. Her boots never faltered. Her gun was ready. The way out was ahead, always was. And when the bluff spat them out into the dawn, the debt would come due in blood and dirt, just as it always had. Dawn scraped its pale knuckles across the top of Carver's Bluff, just as Sella Hawk and her ragged company crawled out through a seam in the stone and into a brittle world of wind and snow. The narrow shaft spat them into a gully where ancient runoff had carved a path through boulders the size of wagons. Sella's boots hit the frost-caked dirt first. She rose slow, her eyes raking the slope above for the torchline the coward had promised them. Nothing moved but the wind. Darla dragged herself out next, rifle slung over her back. She stamped the blood back into her feet, teeth bared against the dawn's bite. Aaron tumbled out last, lantern clutched to his chest, breath hissing in clouds that curled toward the pale sky. He wiped snow from his eyes. "Where are they?" "Wrong hole," Darla rasped, grinning despite the shiver that rattled her words. "They're sniffing ghosts south of us now. Bought themselves a long walk for nothing." Sella checked the slope again. A few boot tracks, half buried by drifting snow. Some poor soul had lingered, maybe waiting for a shadow to show itself in the mine's mouth. They'd missed their moment. Aaron huddled close to Darla's side, the revolver resting heavy on his hip. His shoulders looked wider than they had the night before, like the tunnels had scraped the fear out of him and left something leaner in its place. Sella motioned them low, slipping between the boulders until they were out of sight of the bluffs. Ragged lip. She crouched by a fallen log, pulling the mailbag around front. Its canvas was torn from the shotgun blast back in the drift, silver coins winking through the frayed edges like bad luck trying to break free. Darla crouched beside her, thumb tapping her rifle's stock. "You reckon Barlow still thinks you're worth the price?" Sella's mouth twitched at that. "He'll think it till someone shows him the ledgers written in blood." Aaron frowned, wiping his runny nose with the back of his sleeve. "Who is he really? Just another gang boss?" Darla barked a laugh that startled a crow from a branch overhead. "Barlow ain't no gang boss. He's the man who wants to own every road worth riding. Rail lines, stage routes, freight caravans. He'll buy it or burn it. And when folks run, he buys them too." Sella closed the bag, cinching the strap tight. "He was a whisperback when I drove my first stage. Now he's a name. That's the trouble with names, they make men stupid." They moved fast down the gully, keeping to the shadows. The slope dropped them into a stand of pines that hadn't seen an axe in a generation. Old trunks, rough as broken knuckles, branches. Low enough to hide a wagon team if you were desperate enough. It was cover, but not safe. Nothing felt safe now. Darla stopped them near a ring of rocks that might have once been a hunter's camp. She sank to her haunches, scanning the tree line. "We need wheels. This road won't carry us far on boots." Aaron looked down at his torn boots, the toes crusted white with snow. "How do we get a coach out here?" Sella's smile was thin, her eyes darker than the dawn deserved. "We don't. We take one." She tilted her head, listening. Their hoofbeats. Distant but rolling steady. A single horse, maybe two. She rose, gliding through the trees until she found a gap between the trunks wide enough to see the trail winding below. A small convoy rolled slow through the snow. 2 riders wrapped too. The eyes in furs and oilskin coats. A single coach behind them, drawn by a pair of sturdy mountain ponies. No markings, but the box on the back told the tail-lock steel, the kind that carried payroll or gold shipments too precious for the open. Saddlebag. Darla squinted past her shoulder. Barlow's cut? Or a fool running coin for him? Sella said. Her fingers drummed the revolver's grip. "Doesn't matter." Aaron breathed out through his teeth. "We can't take 2 men in a coach." Darla's grin was all teeth. "Ain't 2. Look at the coach seat." A 3rd man sat there, slumped low, blanket pulled tight. His shoulders rose and fell in a steady rhythm, sleeping, or trying to. Sella watched the trail bend behind them, eyes catching the way the snow hid fresh prints. No outriders, no flanking shadows, she tapped Darla's arm. They're sloppy, must think no one's left alive up here. Darla's chuckle was a cold thing. Let's disappoint him. They slid down the slope, moving like wolves in the brush. Sela felt the road's heartbeat under the snow, the promise of a mile yet to come. She raised her hand when they were 10 paces from the trail. Darla slipped right, rifle sighted. Aaron stayed low, wide-eyed but steady. Sela stepped out first, revolver loose at her side. "Morning, boys." The lead rider jerked, hauling his horse to a stumbling stop. The second froze, one mittened hand creeping for the rifle slung across his saddle horn. Sela tilted her head, the revolver's barrel lifting just a fraction. "Don't," she said. "There's only one road here, and it's mine." The man on the coach seat jolted awake, fumbling for the scattergun propped under his blanket. Darla's shot clipped the wood beside his ear. He froze, eyes wide, mouth working like a fish dumped on a riverbank. The lead rider found his voice. You're Hawk." Sela's smile was thin as the wind. "And you're carrying Barlow's gold. Drop the guns, step away." No one moved. A breath later, Aaron emerged behind them, the revolver trembling but pointed true. "Do it." That did it. The scattergun clattered to the snow. Rifles hit the ground like thrown bones. The horses snorted, breath steaming. Darla stepped in, collecting the weapons. "Keys," she snapped at the coach rider. He fumbled them out, fingers trembling. Sela swung the coach door open. Empty, except for the steel strongbox bolted to the floor. She thumbed the lid. It rattled, full enough to buy any man's death twice over. Aaron stared, awe cutting through the exhaustion. "What do we do with it?" Sela didn't look back. "We deliver it. Same as we do every damn mile." Darla barked a laugh. "Even if it's Barlow's coin?" "Especially then," Sela said. She holstered her gun, climbing onto the box. "Let him choke on the road's promise. It always costs more than he thinks." She tossed the reins to Darla. Aaron scrambled. Up beside them, cheeks raw from wind but eyes lit with something fierce. The coach lurched forward, steel wheels crunching over snow-packed dirt. Behind them, the 3 men stayed kneeling, hands in the air, watching the shadow of the road's last keeper roll away into the pines dot above. The sun clawed through the storm's edge, painting the trail in sharp light that cut through every lie Barlow had bought. The road stretched on bitter, bright, unbroken. And under Sela's boots, it stayed hers 1 mile more. The coach rattled down the narrow pass, iron-shod wheels biting through the snow's crust, each turn of the axle groaning like old bones dragged from shallow earth. Sela Hawk braced her boots on the footrail, eyes narrowed at the road that wound ahead, just a ribbon of white and gray that belonged to no man but waited for any fool brave enough to try. Beside her, Darla handled the reins with the ease of a woman who knew horses as well as she knew the weight of a rifle stock in her shoulder. The new Team Barlow's sturdy ponies snorted clouds into the brittle dawn, heads low, ears twitching at every distant echo. Behind them, the stolen strongbox thudded against the coach wall with each rut they rolled over, gold inside singing its cold promise to anyone who'd ever dreamed of an easier life. Aaron sat on the bench behind them, blanket pulled around his shoulders, revolver laid across his knees. His eyelids drooped but never closed. Each time they dipped into a hollow or crossed a drifted ridge, his gaze flicked to the pines, half expecting another ghost to rise from the snow. "Eyes up," Sela said without turning. Her voice cut the hush like a blade drawn slow from its scabbard. "They come when you think they've bled enough." Aaron's chin lifted, jaw working to chase the cold from his bones. "Barlow's men'll think twice before crossing us." Again, Darla barked a laugh that vanished into the wind. "They won't think at all. That's how you stay mean in this business, never stop when the math gets ugly." The pass bent left, then narrowed where an old landslide had choked half the trail with rock and pine trunks. Sella raised a hand, slowing the team. Snow spilled from the overhanging limbs as the pony's hooves bit down. She leaned forward, studying. The drift. Wagon tracks old, half frozen. But the wind cut strange shapes in the snow, and she didn't trust what the eyes said when the road was this quiet. "Hold 'em here," she murmured. Darla pulled the ponies to a halt. The coach rocked once, settling into the rut. Sella dropped to the trail, boots sinking to her ankles. The pines above were thick with frost, their branches tangled like old men's beards. She crouched low, pressing a bare palm to the wheel track. Warmth, faint, but real. A fresh wagon, no more than an hour ahead, heavy enough to chew deep even. Through crusted snow dots she rose, glancing back. Another coach. Or a freight rig. Darla cracked her knuckles. Think they're friend or Barlow's new fools? Sella's eyes drifted down the pass. Doesn't matter. Anyone ahead is another. Mile that's not theirs yet. They nudged the team forward, the wheels lurching as they climbed the far side of the slide's edge. The pass widened into a bowl where sunlight trickled down in thin spears between the trees. And there they found it. A wagon sunk axle-deep in a drift. A team of tired mules blowing steam, and two figures cursing as they hacked at frozen wheel. Ruts with a splintered shovel. One turned at the creak of Sella's rig rolling close. A woman, older than Darla, bundled in a patched duster and battered hat. Her eyes caught the glint of the revolver on Sella's hip, and she straightened, shovel swinging low like a makeshift spear. "Keep riding, stranger," she called. "Nothing here for you but trouble." Darla nudged Sella with an elbow. "I like her already." Sella stepped off the box, boots crunching over drift crust. She spread her hands palms up, empty but never harmless. "Easy, roads mean enough." Without folk biting each other, the woman spat into the snow. "Mean don't fix an axle that's sunk to the hubs. Unless you've got a plank in that fancy box you're driving." Aaron hopped down, curiosity sparking through his weariness. "You hauling mail?" The woman's lips twisted. "Ours or someone else's makes no damn difference when the wheels won't roll." Her partner, a boy barely older than Aaron, leaned on the mule's harness. His breath came in ragged puffs. The wagon bed was loaded with burlap sacks, split in places to show flour, salt, beans. Food for the mining camps north, if Sella's guess was right. She walked slow around the rig, eyes flicking to the axles, the ice caked under the rims. "Bad luck, or someone had made it look that way. You seeing riders?" she asked. The woman shrugged, shifting the shovel to her other hand. "No one but you. But I know what sabotage looks like. This break's too neat." Darla dropped down beside Aaron, glancing at the sacks. "Camp folk'll starve without this load." Sella said nothing for a breath, just listening to the wind's hush against the pines. The road hummed under her boots, telling her what came next if she left these two to the drift's teeth. She jerked her chin at Darla. "Strip the coach." "Hit the plank and the brace pin," Darla grinned. "Always knew you were a bleeding heart." They worked in the dawn's edge, hacking ice from the axle, sliding the plank under the broken wheel. The mules stamped and snorted, heads tossing. At every crack of the board settling. Aaron and the boy traded glances that said they were both too young for this kind of winter. When the wagon finally rocked free, the woman leaned on her shovel, breath ragged but proud. "Never asked for help. Won't forget it, though." Sella only shrugged. "Every mile earns its due. Yours just got paid forward." Darla cinched the harness lines, stepping back up to their own team. "Where you headed?" "Barlow's Gulch," the woman said. "Miner's been starving for 2 weeks. If I don't roll in with this, they'll sign on with his thugs just to eat." Sella's jaw flexed. "Keep the trail straight. If you see riders, you didn't see us." The woman cracked a grin. "Never saw a damn thing but the road." They rolled on, the coach lighter for what they'd given, but heavier for what they'd chosen. Aaron watched the wagon shrink behind them, boots tapping the strongbox's edge. "You think she make it?" he asked. Sella didn't glance back. "That's her mile to earn. Ours is up ahead." Darla flicked the reins, voice rough but edged with pride. "She'll make it. And when Barlow's men come sniffing, they'll find the road's bigger than one coach and a broken wheel." The pass opened wide then, the pines falling away to show a strip of road that glimmered under the sun's first honest light. Snow fell from the branches like confetti for a parade no one watched but the ghosts who'd ridden before. Sella leaned forward, feeling the miles hum through the leather and iron and cold. This stretch was hers. The next would be 2 and behind. The road whispered its promise again. Every mile earned, every debt repaid. The sun never climbed much higher that day, just hovered behind gauzy clouds, pale and cold, as if the sky itself didn't trust what lay below. The road carved through the lower pass now, wide enough to run a freight team, but crooked enough that every bend threatened an ambush. Sella Hawk rode the box with her boots braced and her eyes never still, the wind tugging at the scarf she'd knotted around her neck to keep the frostbite from her throat. Darla handled the team, fingers loose on the reins like she could coax these stolen ponies to think they'd always belonged to her. Every so often, she'd glance back at the canvas cover tied down over the strong box, Barlow's gold still rattling inside like a tooth waiting to break loose. Aaron perched on the footrail, one hand hooked around the iron rail to keep him steady, the other resting on the revolver tucked tight under his coat. His face looked older in this light-shadowed eyes, lips cracked from too much wind and too little sleep. "Gotta bend up ahead," Darla said, her voice just loud enough to cut through the squeal of the axle. "Too quiet, don't trust it." Sella didn't answer at first. She scanned the ridgeline thin trees clinging to rock, a sheer drop on the west side that turned the road into a knife's edge. If they're waiting, they'll be above. Gravity's cheap. Aaron shifted, boots scraping the box top. "Why keep coming? It's just gold. Let him have it." Darla snorted. "This ain't about the coin, kid. Never was. Road's the prize. Gold just tricks men into dying for it." Sella's jaw tightened. They think they can break the line by buying pieces of it, but it's earned mile by mile. Always was. The coach rattled around the bend, hooves slipping on packed ice. For a heartbeat, the pass opened wide, just enough for a rifle shot to travel clean. Sella's eyes flicked left, catching the flash of a coat in the trees. Her hand dropped. Quick sign Darla read without words. "Hang on." Darla growled. The first bullet sang past Aaron's shoulder, chipping bark where his head had been. He ducked low, the revolver up. Sella stood in the stirrup brace, shotgun yanked from the coach side rail, the hammer already pulled back. 2 riders burst from the timber, horses lathered, guns out. Their coats bore no mark but the look in there. Eyes told Sella enough. They were hired to die, same as the last batch. Darla cracked the reins, team lurching. The coach careened into the open stretch, wheels spraying snow. Aaron fired, his shot wild but enough to make the lead horse shy, throwing its rider wide. Sella leaned out, shotgun braced on the iron rail. She waited, let the second rider draw. Even then fired. The blast slammed through the cold like thunder cracking stone. The man dropped, boot still caught in the stirrup, his body dragging a line through the drift before the horse bucked free. The other rider regrouped, kicking his mount hard, trying to swing around to the team's flank. Sella dropped the empty scattergun, drew her revolver. The road bent again tight, blind. Darla hauled the reins, cursing as the rear wheel skidded. Aaron braced himself, sighted down the revolver. The rider rose in his saddle, rifle high, too close. No time to aim. Sella's shot caught him center chest. The impact folded him backward, his rifle firing straight into the clouds. Horse and corpse vanished into the drop. Silence rolled in behind the gun smoke. Darla eased the ponies down to a trot. Hands trembling just enough to show she still felt the danger singing in her bones. Aaron sank to his haunches, revolver limp in his grip. Was that the last of them? Sella holstered her weapon, eyes on the ridge above. If Barlow's got any sense left, he'll keep his hounds on a short leash now. Darla barked a humorless laugh. Barlow's never had sense. Only gold. They crested the ridge by dusk, the pass falling behind them like a wound trying to scab over. The trail leveled out into a broad shelf of earth, where an old stone marker leaned half-buried in the snow, a stage stop from 20 years back. Long since left to wolves and wind. Sella called halt, boots crunching through drift as she jumped down. She circled the coach, eyes catching every dent in the axle, every squeal that might turn into a brake when they couldn't afford it. Aaron dropped down beside her, shoulders hunched against the wind that cut through the shelf like a knife. Why stop here? Sella wrapped her knuckles against the hub. Need to tighten the brace. If we lose the wheel, the road eats us whole. Darla tied the team to a lone scrub pine, running her palm along the pony's steaming necks. There. Near spent, so's the boy. Aaron bristled at that. I'm fine. Sella didn't look at him when she spoke. Nobody's fine out here. You're standing. That's enough. They worked by starlight and what little lantern flame Darla risked. Wrenches scraped cold iron, frostbitten fingers tapping the bolt back into place. Sella's breath fogged around. The wordless curses she muttered at the stubborn steel. When the wheel sat true again, she stood, rolling her shoulders to fight the chill setting into the hinge of her spine. Darla knelt by the strongbox, one palm resting on its lid like she could read its secrets through the steel. You could buy a county with what's in there, Darla said. Hell, buy your own line, no more bosses. Sella's voice came flat, iron and dirt all through it. Gold buys graves quicker than land. We earn the road. We don't own it. Aaron watched her, eyes wide in the dark. Where's it end? If we keep driving, does it ever stop? Sella tilted her head back, snowflakes settling on her lashes like dust on an old mile marker. She let the silence hold them for a moment. Let the wind whisper what it always did. It ends when there's no more to earn, she said. When you've given it every mile of your spine, and it still asks for one more, Darla snorted. We're fools, all of us. Maybe, Sella said. She stepped up to the coach, palm pressed to its battered flank. But it's our road. That's enough. The stars overhead didn't care. The wind didn't care, but the road did. It always did. And it waited for the next bend, the next ambush, the next mile yet unpaid for in blood and grit. And Sella, boots planted in the frozen ruts, knew she'd give it every last piece she had before it took her too. The wind had teeth by the time they left the old marker behind. Sella Hawk kept her eyes on the trail ahead, boots braced against the sway of the coach as it lurched through a winding gully where snow hid more than it gave away. The battered strongbox rattled under the bench. Barlow's gold, a weight no lighter for how many dead men had tried to take it. Darla guided the team with a hand that never slipped. Every so often she'd lean back, eyes flicking to the ridges that hemmed them in on either side. Frost rimed her lashes, but she didn't bother to wipe it away. The cold was part of the road now. Same as the hunger in their bellies and the silence they'd earned with every mile. Aaron sat on the roof, wrapped in a frayed blanket that made him look half his age. His revolver rested across his knees. He'd stopped flinching at the wind's whistle or the pop of a branch cracking under snow. Now his eyes tracked every shadow like he meant to outstare the dark itself. The gully bent left, then rose into a narrow pass where the pines pressed so close, the branches scraped the coach's side. Sella lifted her chin, listening past the wind's hiss. Somewhere above, a crow caught a sharp, bitter sound that made the horses snort and dance. Hold, she said. Darla reined them in. Hoofbeats thudded hollow on frozen ground as the team stamped and tossed their heads. The stillness that followed felt too neat, like a trap a drunk man thought looked clever. Aaron shifted, blanket falling to his elbows. "What is it?" Sela didn't answer. She dropped from the box, boots crunching into the drift. Her eyes combed the slope. No glint of rifle barrels, no cut path through the trees. Just the hush of the snow, too deep for easy running. Darla muttered behind her, "You think they're done?" Sela's mouth twitched at that, a smile that never touched her eyes. "Done means dead. They're neither." She moved to the coach's flank, knelt, pressed her glove to the snow crust. Fresh indentations. 2. Round for deer, too heavy for coyote. Boot prints, wide set, someone moving slow but strong enough not to mind the drifts. She rose, flicked snow from her coat. On foot. 1, maybe 2. Might be scouts. Darla's eyes narrowed. Or they're leading us off the line. Aaron swallowed, finger tapping the revolver's trigger guard. "So what do we do?" Sela looked at him like she was seeing what he might yet become. "You keep your eyes on the ridge. If I don't come back, you ride till the wheels fall off." Before he could protest, she was gone, slipping through the pines like a shadow grown tired of pretending to be human. Darla cracked the brake, locked the team down tight. Then she stepped off the box, rifle slung low, boots crunching as she followed Sela's trail. They found the first man kneeling at the base of a spruce, head down, hands buried to the wrists in snow. He was muttering under his breath, words bitten. Short by the cold. Sela signaled Darla to hold back. She stepped into view. The man's eyes snapped open wide, wild, rimmed red from windburn. He wasn't armed, not in any way that counted. Just a rough blanket thrown around his shoulders, and a strip of leather lashed tight to his wrist, like he meant to remember something important. "You got a name?" Sela asked. His head bobbed once, like a puppet fighting at strings. "Wade. Wade. I was with them, but I ain't anymore." The bluff, his words tangled up, breath wheezing. Sela crouched, eyes scanning the trees. No prints but his. No voices drifting down. If he was bait, he was rotten bait. Darla moved closer, rifle barrel tilting down. "Looks half dead." Sela's tone stayed soft but carried iron under it. "Where's the rest?" Wade's teeth clacked together. "Up high, watching the road. They think you'll run. They always think folks run." She leaned forward, gloved fingers brushing his coat collar aside. No fresh bullet holes, no blood. Just the tremor of a man who'd had enough of the roads. "Cold mercy. You done running?" she asked. Wade nodded, eyes glassy. "Ain't no place to run to. He'll buy me dead or alive." "So I came here. Figured you'd finish it," Darla snorted. "We ain't your salvation, friend." Sela rose, brushing snow from her knee. "No, we're the road. And it don't care who begs." She motioned him up. He stumbled, boots skidding, breath whistling in his chest. Darla took his elbow rough but not unkind and steered him toward the coach. Aaron watched them come through the trees, eyes wide above the revolver's iron sight. The moment he saw Wade's ragged shape, he lowered the gun. "Who's he?" "A lesson," Sela said. She climbed back up, boots scraping the step. No man outruns what he owes. They pushed on through the pass. Wade curled on the bench behind Aaron, shivering like a dog too mean to die quick. The pines thinned as the road dropped toward the river basin, ice glittering where the stream cut through the drifts. Darla flicked the reins, voice carrying over the squeal of the axles. "You know they're waiting down there." Sela nodded. "Let him wait. Road's ours. They want it. They'll have to bleed for every foot." The river crossing loomed ahead, an old timber bridge half buried in snowdrifts, planks creaking under their own weight. Beyond it, the trail forked, west to the mines, north to the station town where word of Barlow's reach hadn't yet poisoned every handshake. Aaron leaned forward, voice hoarse. "Which way?" Sela's eyes never left the bridge. "The way that keeps us honest. The way that keeps us moving." Darla cracked a grin, teeth flashing through her frostbitten breath. That'd be north then. They rolled out onto the bridge, timbers groaning under the weight of the coach and its secrets. Below, the river murmured a whisper of black. Water under all that ice, hungry for any fool who thought he could cross without paying. Sella looked out over the miles ahead white hills, broken fences, the scars of a land that never forgave, but sometimes let you stand, if you were willing to bleed for the privilege. Her hand found the revolver's worn grip. Her other settled on the strongbox's cold steel edge. One more mile. One more debt. Always. The snow turned to sleep by the time they left the bridge behind, each drop spitting against the coach roof like nails tapping out the hours they didn't have left. The road bent north, tight between frostbitten hills that rose like the ribs of some dead giant, old fence posts jutting through the drifts like broken teeth. Sella Hawk rode the box, her shoulders hunched against the cutting wind, revolver tucked under her coat but never far from her palm. The strongbox rattled inside, iron hinges humming with every rut the wheels found. Each coin inside sounded like another ghost telling her the road wasn't done asking yet. Darla held the reins in one gloved fist, the other resting on her thigh, fingertips drumming a rhythm older than her years. The team wheezed plumes of steam into the gray air, nostrils flaring at every branch that cracked under the weight of sleet. She didn't talk much now. Neither did Sella. Words were for folks who still believed in promises the road wouldn't break. Aaron sat wedged inside the coach, half curled around the strongbox like a hound guarding its master's bones. Wade, the half-frozen drifter they'd pulled from the bluff, leaned opposite him, eyes closed, breath rasping. The boy kept the revolver close but found no comfort in its cold iron. Somewhere behind them, riders would be sniffing out the tracks. The sleet hadn't yet buried. Barlow's dogs wouldn't quit, not with the gold singing its promise to any man mean enough to reach for it. Sella felt them back there, every hoofbeat her own heartbeat's echo. The pass narrowed again. Old split-rail fences gave way to dry stone walls, the ghosts of abandoned homesteads leaning against the hillsides like drunkards too stubborn to lie down. Sella's eyes swept the trail ahead, footprints in the churned snow. A drag mark where something heavy had been hauled off the road. Darla grunted, low and flat. "Saw it too?" "Yeah." Sella eased her revolver loose. "Too fresh to be dead." They rolled another 50 yards before the ambush broke. A shot cracked from the tree line. One of the ponies screamed, stumbled, blood spraying red on the snow's skin. Darla swore, hauling the reins. The coach lurched sideways, wheels carving deep into the drift. "Off!" Sella barked. She jumped, boots crunching down just as another shot hissed past her ear. Aaron spilled out the coach door behind her, revolver out but shaking. Wade flopped after him, half-frozen legs buckling. Darla hit the ground last, rifle swinging up smooth. Two figures moved in the pines, a glint of brass, the steam of their breath betraying them. Sella fired once, the pop of her Colt swallowed by the wind. A grunt, one shape folded against a trunk, crimson blooming. Darla dropped to a knee, squeezed. Off a shot. It kicked bark off a cedar, missing the second man by inches. He bolted deeper, boots punching holes in the crust. "Let him go," Sella growled. She moved to the wounded pony, hand on its steaming neck. The animal's breath rattled, eyes wild. Aaron's voice was a scrape. "Can it walk?" Sella just shook her head once, quiet. Then the shot barked one clean round to the temple. The pony slumped, the lines slack in Darla's fist. "That's the lead gone," Darla spat. "We dragged the coach, we're bait." Sella holstered the Colt, eyes sweeping the pass. The trail north curved through the ruined bones of a farmhouse, a chimney still standing, roof long gone. "We hold there." Aaron's mouth twitched like he wanted to argue but didn't have the heart left to. "Waste on it." He helped Wade up, half carrying him through the drift while Darla freed the surviving pony from its harness. They made the ruin as the sleet turned to snow again, heavier now, swallowing the trail behind them. The farmhouse's stone walls cut the wind but did nothing for the cold that gnawed at their boots. Sella found an old iron stove, kicked the rusted door open, and set to lighting a twist of cloth inside. Flame flickered blue, weak but better than the dark. Darla knelt by a window frame, rifle balanced on the sill. "They'll come for the box." Sella just nodded. "Let 'em." Aaron settled Wade against the stove, his hand on the man's shoulder like a promise he couldn't keep. "What if they rush us?" Sella checked her revolver. 6 rounds left. A second cylinder in her coat pocket, cold as the grave. "Then we rush 'em back." The wind rose, rattling the chimney. Somewhere out in that white, a voice called a whoop, half a warning, half a challenge. Darla's jaw flexed. That's Barlow's crew, all right. The first rider appeared like a ghost through the curtain of snow, his horse picking through the drift. He saw the ruin, the flicker of firelight, the line of Sella's revolver pointed steady at his chest. He didn't even get the chance to shout. Before Darla's rifle cracked him from the saddle, 2 more came behind him, yelling now, pistols flashing. Lead punched through the rotten wallboards, showering plaster over Aaron's head. Sella fired twice, 1 shot wide, the other finding the neck of a man who staggered backward into the drift, red froth spilling down his scarf. Wade groaned at the stove, eyes rolling. Aaron planted his boots, gun raised, barrel quivering. Darla's rifle barked again, another man down, boots kicking weakly at the snow. Then silence. Smoke from the stove mixed with the smoke from the guns, wrapping the ruin in the stink of black powder and old rot. "Reload," Sella said, voice calm as dawn. She cracked the Colt open, ejected brass that steamed in the frigid air. Aaron's hands fumbled fresh rounds from his pocket. Darla just smirked. "How many you think?" Sella watched the drifting snow fill the tracks of the dead. Enough to remind Barlow the road don't sell cheap. Above them, the wind howled through the chimney, carrying the promise that more boot heels waited in the white. Sella felt the road in her bones, how it demanded every drop of heat they could spare, every round, every heartbeat. 1 more mile, 1 more stand. The road would always ask, and she would always answer. The dead man's horse lingered near the ruin's wall, breath steaming in the dark as flakes settled on its saddle. Sella Hawk watched it from the broken window, revolver cradled in her palm, thumb stroking the worn grip like it was a prayer. She'd long ago stopped believing in but couldn't forget how to say. Darla crouched by the stove's dull glow, eyes flicking between the door and the black tree line where fresh ghosts waited. Wade dozed against a stone wall, breath rattling, each exhale a reminder that he wouldn't outlast the cold without a fight left in him. Aaron sat near the window opposite Sella, fingers wrapped around his revolver so tight his knuckles glowed. Bone-white dot the wind outside eased for a heartbeat, the ruin's walls creaking like an old hull adrift on a frozen sea. Then boots crunched on snow slow, measured, not a charge. Not yet, just men gathering nerve enough to try. Sella met Darla's eyes. He's pushing him now. Darla didn't bother asking who. Barlow's ghost had never left the bluff, just sent new hands to do what the old ones hadn't lived to finish. She wiped a thumb across her rifle's sight. "If they rush, we pull in through the back. If they rush, we bury him right here," Sella said. Her voice was low, calm, threaded with that hard truth that kept her spine from splintering. Road doesn't give second miles. A boot scraped stone. A cough a boy's from the sound of it, young enough to believe he'd be the one to make his legend here in the snow. Darla rolled her eyes, sighted through the busted frame. Aaron whispered, "What if he's just ... like me?" Sella never flinched. "Then he learns what you did. The road costs more than it promises." The cough came again, closer. A shape blurred at the ruin's edge, rifle rising. Darla's barrel flashed once. The boy crumpled, breath gone to mist that swirled over his chest like smoke from a guttered lamp. Aaron's jaw worked. He chose, Darla snapped. So do we. Snow fell harder, drifting through the broken roof where beams leaned like ribs. Wade stirred, mumbling about debts and devils. Sela ignored him. Her eyes were on the slope that led back. To the pass, what waited beyond the reach of their guns. She spoke soft, but each word hit like a hammer. Barlow's no fool. He'll try to box us in, smoke or fire. Darla grinned, no mirth in it. Then we light it first. They moved like women who'd done this before. Darla snapped the legs off a rotten bench, piled splinters by the stoves. Mouth. Sela slid an oilskin pouch from the coach's toolbox, dribbled a line across the threshold. Aaron watched wide-eyed, the boy in him fighting the roadsman Sela kept trying to shape. This'll trap us, he said. Or free us, Sela answered. She laid a matchstick across her knee, thumb on the head. Outside, boots shuffled again closer. A dozen men by the sound, each heartbeat feeding the hush. A voice rose, calm, snake oil smooth. Hawk! Sela smiled, nothing warm in it. She stepped to the shattered window, match balanced like a promise. Barlow. A man stepped through the white, wrapped in a buffalo coat, hat low, no gun drawn. Not yet. Just that same grin he'd sold to every fool who'd ever thought the road could be bought with gold alone. You got my property, he called. Darla barked a laugh behind her. You got my bullet last mile. Still want another? Barlow lifted a hand. His boys fanned wide, rifles glinting under lanterns swaying on poles. They ringed the ruin like wolves. Testing the fence. Ain't here to bleed you, Hawk, Barlow said. Just talk. Sela tilted her head. Talk's for men who still think they got something worth saying. His grin didn't waver. Hand it over, I let you walk. Sela struck the match. The oil flared at her boots, catching the drift like a hungry tongue. Barlow flinched back, coat sleeve singed. We roll when the wheels turn, Sela said. Not for your coin, not for your name. Barlow's eyes flicked to the blaze curling up the ruined side. The snow ate at the flame's edges, but the wind was wrong, blowing sparks back into the dry beams. You'll burn in there, he sneered. Darla chambered around. Better ashes than chained. Wade stirred awake, coughing. Barlow, he'll buy the road out from under you. No, Sela said, her eyes locked on the circle closing in. The road can't be bought. Only written, only paid for. Barlow stepped forward, coat flaring, then pay girl. The ruin cracked open. Gunfire flared in the snow's hush, red and orange licking up the rafters. Sela fired once, twice, each shot deliberate, each a debt she'd been holding back. Darla's rifle barked over her shoulder, the echo swallowed by the hiss of fire and sleet. Aaron pressed his back to the stone, barrel up. A man lunged through the burning doorway, young, eyes wide. Aaron's shot caught him square, the recoil, nearly knocking the revolver from his hands. He didn't look away when the boy fell. Outside, Barlow roared, voice ragged. Bury them, no peace left for the crows. But the ruin didn't wait to be buried. Flames climbed the beams, licking past the stones, sparks showering into the white. Sela grabbed Aaron's coat, yanked him toward the back wall where a section of stone already leaned loose. Out, she barked. Smoke buys us a mile. Darla covered. Them, last round spent as she kicked coals into the drift, forcing the ring back. Wade stumbled after them, half dead but grinning like the road had finally taught him how to die. They spilled into the trees, ruin blazing behind them, snow turning steam as sparks chased them down the trail. Sela never looked back. Ahead was another mile, another debt, and the road waiting, always waiting to see who'd pay next. The ruin was still burning behind them when the road opened up under a bruised dawn. Sela Hawk pushed through the tree line first, revolver held loose but ready. Eyes narrowed against the wind that carved fresh cuts into her raw face. Darla followed. Boots slogging through knee-deep drifts. Rifle empty but braced like a staff to keep her upright. Aaron stumbled between them. Coat flapping open, the strongbox clutched to his chest like an iron heart still too heavy to bury. Wade trailed behind, each step more ghost than man, the frost stitching his coat shut where the seams had torn during their crawl from the blaze. No sign of Barlow's men yet. The fire had bought them an hour, at best a mile more to earn before. The road asked its price again. The snow here was old and drifted, burying half-rotted fence rails and stone markers from a settlement, long forgotten by any map worth printing. Darla dropped to a knee, gasping steam into her gloved palm. "We need wheels, Hawk. The coach is gone. We stay on foot, we're meat for the crows." Sella scanned the tree line, mind turning like a slow wheel on black ice. Farm lane runs west from here. Or used to. Maybe there's stock left. Aaron squinted up the slope. What if it's stripped? Or worse, what if Barlow's already sent riders that way? Sella didn't answer. She crouched near an old post, bare wood splintered and bitten deep by iron nails. A sign used to hang here. Directions, distances. Promises of shelter that meant nothing now. She scraped a boot across the frozen ground. If there's nothing left, we keep moving. That's the only bargain the road offers. Keep moving or stay buried. They angled west, crossing a shallow creek where the ice snapped under their boots but held. Wade slipped once, knee-deep in the frigid water, before Aaron dragged him clear. The older man just wheezed, eyes glazed but mouth stretched in a grin. That belonged to someone who'd stopped fearing the grave miles ago. They climbed another ridge, breath coming in ragged curses, until Darla spotted it, a barn hunkered against a split-rail fence, roof half-caved under the weight of snow. A single horse stood inside the ruined pen, shaggy-coated, ribs showing under its winter fur. Darla grinned like a wolf that smelled fresh meat. "That'll run." Sella moved slow, palms out. The horse snorted, eyes rolling white at the stink of fire and blood clinging to them all. She clicked her tongue once, low and steady. When the reins came into her hand, she stroked the beast's nose. Cold but not cruel like the road itself, they rummaged through the barn's remains. Found a cracked saddle, half a bridle, rope stiff with old grease. Good enough. Aaron looked at the single horse, then the strongbox still chained to his wrist. "It won't carry all of us. It's not meant to." Sella knelt, working the strap around the strongbox, then tied it firm to the saddle horn. "This road wants a witness, not cargo. It needs to see one of us earn it to the end." Darla spat, breath smoking. "You always planned to ride alone." Sella's eyes softened at that, the first warmth since the fire. "You'd slow me down." Darla slugged her shoulder, hard enough to sting. "You slow yourself down enough for all of us." Wade sank to the snow, a low laugh rattling through his cracked lips. "Doesn't matter who rides. The road's already won." Sella stepped closer, crouched to meet his clouded stare. "Not today. Not yet." She turned to Aaron, unhooking the revolver from his belt. "Keep it. The next road you walk it on your own terms." Aaron's hands shook as he took the cold iron. "You think it'll be enough? Won't ever be enough. But it'll be yours." She swung up into the saddle, the horse shifting under her weight, hooves crunching frost. Darla grabbed the bridle, pulling Sella's face down to hers. Their foreheads touched, one heartbeat against another. The only prayer either of them still believed. "You get him," Darla whispered. "And if you can't, bury him so deep the wind forgets his name." Sella pulled back, a grin ghosting her cracked lips. "See you when I do." She nudged the horse west, picking up the lane that cut through a split in the hills. No spurs needed. The beast seemed to know the run was its last best chance. 2 behind her. Aaron and Darla watched until she vanished into the drift. Wade lay back against the fence rail, eyes glassy as dawn finally split the sky open. "She won't come back," he rasped. "Nobody ever does." Darla checked her rifle, even empty. "She's not nobody." The lane unwound before Sella like a ribbon of bone laid bare. Ahead, she could feel the Pull Barlow's men waiting at the next bend, guns half lowered, nerves raw from the fire. She'd left behind. She leaned forward, one hand on the strongbox, feeling the weight of every mile under her boots. She'd always been the road's keeper, the one it asked most from. Today would be no different, when she spotted the first rider. In the snow's haze, gun drawn, horse stamping, she raised a hand, slowing just enough to make the shot count. Her revolver barked once. The man folded sideways, snow catching him like a cold blanket. A second rider bolted. Too late. Sella dug in her heels. The horse surged, hooves churning white. The strongbox rattled at her knee, a promise made of iron. And the kind of ghosts you carried until they carried you. Barlow stood in the clearing beyond, coat whipping in the gale, eyes wide with that grin that never reached the truth of him. He raised a shotgun but didn't fire. Maybe he saw it then, that the road wasn't hers alone, but a chain none of them would ever break. Sella's revolver spoke twice. Barlow staggered, dropped to his knees. Snow kissed his cheek like a final kindness. She circled him once, boots touching down as she slipped from the saddle. The wind howled through the pass, scattering the last smoke of the ruin that had bought her this mile. Barlow's grin flickered, blood bubbling in his teeth. It won't matter, another'll come. The road don't care who owns it. Sella knelt, pressed the revolver's warm barrel against his chest. It cares who earns it. The last shot was mercy. Or maybe just another mile paid. When it was done, she turned the horse south, strongbox still chained to the saddle. The wind carried her breath away in ragged clouds. The trail behind her was smeared with blood and ashes. The road ahead was snow, stone, and a promise no gold could buy. And when the sun broke at last, it found her still riding boots braced, spine straight, eyes fixed on the horizon that never stayed still long enough to own her.